The life of a ninja beginning in the Hidden Mist Village. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 426, Plan. Those non-Hakatsu clan ninjas were fine, just numb and tingling all over their bodies, unable to move, but the two Hakatsu clan ninjas in the patrol team were in bad luck. Their liquefied bodies were most afraid of the lightning ninjutsu, and they were hit by lightning at this moment, and they immediately collapsed on the ground, like a bowl of jelly that was knocked over on the ground, sticky, and couldn't even maintain their human form. Ice release, ice sealing technique. At the same time, Qishuang, who was rushing in the front, was wrapped in a white cold air after the raging lightning, like a cold wind blowing through the crowd. The sound of wailing stopped abruptly, and the patrol ninjas on the ground were all frozen into ice sculptures the moment they came into contact with his cold air. Clang clang clang. Several team members who followed closely behind took out their weapons and smashed them at the ice sculptures, trying to vent their hatred and cut them into pieces. However, the weapons did not leave even a trace when they hit them, but instead made their hands numb. Seeing this, Qishuang hurriedly stopped them and said, "Don't waste your energy. This ice is specially made. It is impossible to break it with ordinary strength. Let them stay in this ice and slowly experience the feeling of death." Frozen by this ice sealing technique, even if the people inside will not be frozen to death, they will slowly suffocate to death due to the ice. It's really a bargain for these bastards. Someone spat in hatred and then kicked the ice sculpture next to him. There was only a bang, and the ice sculpture fell to the ground, still intact. "Let's go. We have more important things to do." After calling a few people, Qishuang immediately took the lead and rushed to the deeper part of the Ghost Lantern Station, where the Ghost Lantern clan leader's mansion was located. That was the command center of the Ghost Lantern clan, where in addition to the Ghost Lantern clan leader, there were also the leaders of the various forces under his jurisdiction. If they were taken down in one fell swoop, the impact on the entire battle situation would be self-evident. Knowing the seriousness of the matter, several people did not say much and followed immediately. At the same time, the other beheading teams also started fighting. Some encountered the patrol team of GUI Lantern, while others found their own beheading targets. For a time, the battles in the hinterland of GUI Lantern were fluctuating one after another. Then, the remaining GUI Lantern ninjas became active, searching for malicious invaders, while rescuing their companions who were attacked. The entire GUI Lantern family was like a lion that was awakened, opening its bloody mouth in anger, ready to tear apart anyone who dared to challenge it. As the GUI Lantern guards became active, the beheading mission of the Qishuang team became more and more difficult, because they encountered the GUI Lantern ninjas more and more frequently on the way to the GUI Lantern clan leader's mansion. In order to save strength to perform the beheading mission, they had to choose to avoid those guards as much as possible. Only when they really couldn't avoid it, they would choose to fight and quickly solve the opponent without delay. This was to prevent them from being entangled by the other guards who followed closely and getting into an endless battle. Despite this, when the group arrived outside the GUI Deng mansion, they were still exhausted. Qishuang was fine, because after experiencing the baptism of natural energy, his physical fitness was far superior to that of ordinary people, and these consumptions were still within his tolerance range. However, the chakras of the other 8 people had been consumed by more than half, and their condition was far worse than when they first set out. Hiding in a corner outside the residence of the Ghost Lantern clan leader, Qishuang quietly took a look outside and whispered to everyone, knowing that someone has sneaked in to assassinate, they have strengthened their vigilance. Based on the current situation, it is basically impossible to sneak in without avoiding the guards. If you want to kill the target, you can only break through by force and kill in one go. As for the result, you should be able to imagine that it is easy to rush in, but it is difficult to get out. You regret it now, but it's not too late. Breaking through by force will inevitably attract the attention of the other guards and increase the difficulty of their breakthrough. In this case, it is not an easy task to find the Ghost Lantern sect and other important figures in the mansion and kill them. Moreover, when they broke into the residence of the Ghost Lantern clan leader, it also meant the countdown of their lives began. If they could not complete the decapitation mission in a short time, they would be surrounded by the Ghost Lantern guards. The result can be imagined. After a short silence, one person immediately said, "Don't worry, sir. We have already prepared ourselves to die. We will never flee from the battlefield. If we can use this life to win the battle, it will be worth it." Then, the rest of the people expressed their determination to fight to the death and never retreat. "Okay." Qishuang sighed and told them, "Although we have already gone deep into this place, we don't know the specific location of Gui Deng Zhengzang and other personnel. So, our next most important task is to find out their specific location in the mansion. Because time is limited, we must act separately and enter the mansion from 9 directions, searching along the way to the central area. No matter who finds their traces, send a signal immediately, and the rest of the people will kill directly after seeing the signal. Do you understand?" Hearing this, the 8 people all nodded seriously. Originally, if Captain King's white eyes were here, there would be no need to go through so much trouble. With the help of the white eyes' long-range visual range, to lock the target's position, they could just kill indirectly. Unfortunately, King died tragically at the hands of Ju, and the only Byakugan of Wuian also completely lost its effectiveness due to the death of its host. Wuian no longer has Byakugan. Then, Qishuang told everyone again, "Wait a minute, I will break through the main gate first and attract most of the firepower, and you will take the opportunity to kill in and quickly find the target." "But sir, it is too dangerous for you to break through first and attract firepower. Let's attack with 9 people at the same time." Someone immediately made a suggestion. "Yes, let's attack with 9 people at the same time." That's right. The rest of them agreed. Now, the guards of the Ghost Lantern department are on full alert. As long as someone shows up, they will definitely suffer a terrible blow. And this young captain took the initiative to attract firepower. The result can be imagined. Although they were dissatisfied with this young captain, that was only in the past. After seeing him take action several times, they confirmed that this young man was indeed qualified to lead them. Moreover, they were ready to die in battle, so how could they be willing to let such a young man sacrifice himself to pave the way for them? Therefore, it is better for all 9 of them to go out together and share the risk. Seeing that several people began to care about him, Qishuang smiled bitterly. He didn't have the noble character of sacrificing himself for others. He simply felt that, if he didn't attract the firepower, these guys would probably die in a few minutes after rushing in. And the task of searching for Gui Deng Zhengzang and others is naturally the more people the better. If any of these 8 guys died, his task would become more difficult. Especially before finding Gui Deng Zhengzang and others, he needed these guys alive. So, he volunteered to break through the main gate first, attract the attention of the guards, and create opportunities for them. Anyway, he has the ice release chakra mode to protect himself. As long as the chakra is not exhausted, there will be no worries about his life. The eyes of the dead should not be used. Those who have just died should be able to be transplanted while they are still hot, but if they have been dead for too long, they will definitely not be able to be transplanted. This problem should be easy for everyone to understand. So King's Eye will not appear again, and everyone doesn't need to expect it. Chapter 427, Strong Attack. Then, Qishuang said helplessly to the others, "You don't have to worry about my safety. These guards can't do anything to me. You just need to rush in while I'm attracting firepower and find the location of Gui Deng Zhengzang. Now, you all disperse and find the breakthrough position. 10 minutes later, I will launch an attack." Seeing that the young captain had made up his mind, the 8 people had nothing to say, but they admired Qishuang's spirit of self-sacrifice even more. They all secretly made up their minds to complete the task and never let the captain down. Then, the 8 people quietly dispersed and began to look for their own breakthrough points around the mansion. At the same time, a bandaged man with a giant sword on his back broke into the command room of Terumi's house. "Zabuza, why are you back so soon?" Terumi asked in surprise, after recognizing his identity at a glance. She also assigned Zabuza a decapitation mission. Although it was not as difficult as Qishuang's, it was definitely not easy. Who would have thought that the other party would come back so soon, which was really beyond her expectations. I suddenly remembered something, and I need to confirm it with you in person, so I stopped my action temporarily and came to find you," Zabuza said in an emotionless tone, and walked towards the blue-skirted lady. "What's the matter?" Terumi Medi was extremely puzzled. She didn't understand what was so important that made Zabuza, a rule-abiding person, violate his principles and temporarily stop his action. "I want to ask you to do me a favor." Before she finished speaking, Terumi Medi saw Zabuza's figure flash and rushed to her in an instant. Not good. Although she didn't understand what this former companion was doing, Terumi Medi still smelled a hint of danger. She instinctively dodged to the side, but her speed was not as fast as Zabuza, a master of physical skills, and the other party deliberately led her to talk to lower her guard, but she saw a flash of silver light, and a wide blade was already on her neck. By the time the rest of the people in the command room reacted, everything was too late. "Zabuza, Jonin, what are you doing? Let go of Medi Terumi. Let go of the lady." Everyone surrounded him and shouted at him. However, Zabuza didn't even look at them and ignored their shouting. He just calmly looked at the blue-dressed beauty under his knife. "Zabuza, what do you mean?" Feeling the sharp edge against her neck, Medi Terumi didn't dare to move at all and could only glare at the man with the bandaged face, because she knew clearly that with Zabuza's speed, he was fully capable of cutting her throat before she could do anything. "Ming, do me a favor." Zabuza sighed. "With our relationship, even if you ask me to help, there is no need to do this, right?" Medi Terumi's tone was a little dissatisfied, but helpless. "I want you to accompany me to see someone, but I'm afraid you won't agree, so I can only ask you to go in this way," Zabuza murmured. "It seems that the person you want me to see must be someone I don't want to see." Terumi Medi sighed, and then ordered everyone, "You block the news and stabilize the situation. I'll be back soon." After she finished her instructions, Zabuza immediately took her out of the command room. Everyone was anxious, but they were afraid to do anything. They could only watch Zabuza kidnap Terumi Medi. On the other side, Qishuang looked at his pocket watch and saw that the agreed time had come. He immediately walked out of the bunker, no longer hiding his whereabouts, and walked straight to the gate of the mansion of the head of the Ghost Lantern clan. The guards patrolling outside immediately discovered his whereabouts. However, seeing that he was walking alone and calmly, he didn't look like an enemy, so they shouted loudly, "Stop, tell me your name." Qishuang ignored him and just turned on the ice release chakra mode and continued to approach the main gate. Seeing this, the guards didn't understand that this was the intruder who sneaked into their base and destroyed everything. "Kill." With the order, everyone threw the kunai, or darts in their hands, and shot them at the pale figure. Qishuang also ignored it, and just approached, while making hand seals. Those kunai and darts were like black raindrops, hitting him densely, but they were all bounced to the ground by the chakra coat on his body, which did not cause him any trouble at all, and even could not interfere with his hand seals. Ice release, ice dragon bullet technique. Before the black raindrops fell, Qishuang's hand seal was completed. Only a wisp of cold air was seen emanating from his body and condensed into ice on his body surface. As the ice became thicker and thicker, a giant ice dragon more than 10 meters long appeared in front of everyone. Qishuang froze himself in the head of the ice dragon. "Go." With a thought, he controlled the ice dragon, scratched the ground with his 5 claws, and rushed straight towards the guards outside the main gate. Seeing this, the guards cast spells to resist. For a moment, flames, thunder, rapids, and strong winds intertwined into a colorful ninjutsu storm, rolling towards the ice dragon. Because the opponent had too many people, Qishuang did not dare to resist. He hurriedly controlled the ice dragon to leap into the air, avoiding the ninjutsu storm from above, and then smashed towards the crowd behind. Unexpectedly, the ice dragon would suddenly change direction. Everyone had no time to dodge, and was immediately bullied in front of them. Without too much delicate control, Qishuang drove the ice dragon and rushed into the crowd. The guards were like wheat blown down by the wind, and were immediately blown to pieces by him. Some calm guys took the opportunity to stick a lot of detonating talismans on the ice dragon. There was an explosion, flames shot up into the sky, and the ice dragon disappeared in the smoke. Just when everyone thought that the ice dragon was completely blown up, a huge dragon head poked out from the smoke again, followed by a long dragon body. Except for a few missing toes, the entire ice dragon was almost unscathed. Then, it rampaged through the crowd, making everyone miserable. There were even a few unlucky people who were hit by the dragon's tail and directly knocked down the courtyard wall. They fell into the ruins without a sound, and no one knew whether they were alive or dead. In just a few breaths, the courtyard wall where the main gate was located was completely destroyed by Qishuang driving the ice dragon, and the residence of the leader of the Ghost Lantern tribe was completely exposed. At the same time, after discovering that there was an enemy at the main gate, and it was still very difficult, the guards from other places heard the news and rushed over, and everyone joined forces to completely surround the ice dragon. After a round of ninjutsu bombardment, the ice dragon finally broke, revealing the white figure inside. After all, human power is limited. Although Qishuang has cultivated ice escape to a very high level, the ice blocks he made have extremely high hardness, but in the face of countless people's bombardment, it is still impossible to ignore it. As long as each person causes a little damage to his ice dragon, after superimposing countless damage effects, it can also be broken. Chapter 428 Signal. After the ice dragon was smashed, everyone's confidence increased greatly. They immediately intensified the release of the spells, and all kinds of ninjutsu were shot at Qishuang like rain. However, the result disappointed them. Whether it was fire burning, lightning strikes, wind cutting, or water immersion, they could not knock down the pale figure, and even the figure did not shake. How could this happen? Someone opened his mouth in surprise. Originally thought that, after breaking the ice dragon spell, they could quickly take down this invader who broke through the barrier alone. Who knew that the layer of pale white glow on the opponent's body was so strong that its defense ability was ridiculous, even more terrifying than the ice dragon just now, and there was no hope of smashing it at all. At the same time, Afei and the others hiding in the dark were also shocked when they saw this scene. It is too difficult to break such a defense. The patriarch of the Ghost Lantern clan, Ghost Lantern Masamune, also saw this scene. How could he not know that the outside world was turned upside down by someone? However, for his own safety, he did not dare to show up rashly, but quietly hid in the dark to observe the situation. As for relocation, he also thought about it, but here there are many guards protecting. It is already the safest place. He has confidence in his guards. After all, if he can't get safety in his base camp, it will be more dangerous to escape outside. Manu, are you sure you can break that guy's body defense? He asked his son beside him. Manu thought for a while, and said slowly, the layer of defense on his body is constructed with pure chakra. If Samehuda is in my hand, it should not be difficult to break it. Samehuda's characteristic of absorbing chakra can make any ninjutsu lose its due effectiveness, so it can easily break the tricky defensive technique on that person. Besides Samehuda, is there no other way? Masamune Hazuki frowned. He regretted that he had given Samehuda, which was returned by the 4th generation, to Ziguishan Puffer Demon. After all, it was the most unique of the 7 ninja swords. However, at that time, their family already had 4 ninja swords, and Manu could control them at will. If he left Samehuda behind, it would definitely arouse envy. In order to reduce trouble, he threw Samehuda away again. Flatfish should also work. Manu continued, but Flatfish needs a long time to charge. If it is not charged enough, I'm afraid it will not be able to break the man's defense. The next one is Flying Foam. But if we use Flying Foam to break the man's defense, I'm afraid our entire mansion will become a ruin. The other part is body defense is too strong, which means that he needs to use Flying Foam to make a large number of detonating tags to achieve the desired result. But the environment here is not suitable, and using a large number of detonating tags will only do more harm than good. At this time, there were bursts of exclamations and shouts of killing around the mansion again, and someone rushed in from outside. They were the 8th Thunder Escape subordinates under Qishuang, who took advantage of the opportunity when he attracted firepower and there was a gap in the defense around the mansion to rush in. Feint to the east and attack in the west. Masamune Kizuna glanced at the pale white figure fighting outside the gate again and immediately understood the other party's plan. Then, he ordered his son, Manu, go and kill those annoying rats for me. The longer those assassins stay in the mansion, the greater the damage they can cause. Therefore, he must eliminate them as soon as possible. Yes. Kizuna Manu responded and was about to leave, but found that a void vortex slowly opened next to him. He immediately stopped and quickly blocked his father. Then, a guy wearing an orange one-eyed mask walked out of the void vortex. He knew that it was his father's collaborator, but he also knew that it was the culprit who persuaded his father to provoke a rebellion. He didn't know what the other party's purpose was, but the other party tied the Kizuna family to the wheel of war and indirectly made the Hidden Mist village look like this, which made it difficult for him to trust this ally. My good friend, you don't have to go. Someone has helped to solve it. Under the mask, Afeni smiled and greeted Manu. I don't have a friend like you who doesn't even dare to show his face, Manu said, while still on guard. Until now, he didn't know what this guy named Afeni looked like and what his true identity was. Originally, they didn't need to pay attention to such a stranger. But his father was like a possessed man who only wanted to control the Hidden Mist village and didn't care who the person who cooperated with him was. Hearing this, Afeni looked at him playfully but didn't say much. As if he didn't hear the gunpowder in his son's tone, Kizuna Masamune said to the one-eyed mask in surprise, is there anyone helping? Who? Then, he found that the commotion in various places in the mansion was quickly subsiding. In just a few breaths, it returned to the previous calm again, as if nothing had happened. Afei looked at the figure fighting hard outside the gate and murmured, I fought with that guy once before, and found him too difficult to deal with. So I called 2 friends to help. One of them was bored and helped you deal with the 8 invaders. I think the clan leader won't blame us for meddling in other people's business, right? After saying that, he turned around and looked at Gui Dengzengzan with a playful look. No. Gui Dengzengzan waved his hands repeatedly and pretended to be calm. I'm so happy that someone helped me solve the problem. How could I blame you? Afei, who was always alone, suddenly had 2 more friends to help him, which surprised and confused him. Because Afei had never told him about the reinforcement. Because of this incident, Gui Dengzengzan became more vigilant about Afei in his heart. At the same time, Qishuang, who was fighting outside the gate and restraining the guards, heard the sudden chaos in the mansion and immediately understood that it was his 8 subordinates who successfully broke in. However, before he could be happy for too long, the chaos in the mansion slowly began to subside, which made him feel an ominous premonition. At this moment, accompanied by a piercing scream, a fire meteor rose into the sky. Then it exploded with a bang and turned into a brilliant firework. Seeing this scene, he couldn't help but be happy, because that was the signal flare unique to their team. They had an agreement with each other that, after finding the ghost lantern Masamune, they would send a signal to notify everyone. Since they had found the ghost lantern Masamune, he didn't need to deliberately entangle with the guards here and consume his precious chakra. Now he only needed to get rid of these people quickly and then rush in to kill the ghost lantern clan leader and others in the shortest time, and he could successfully complete the mission and evacuate here. Then, while avoiding the offensive of the crowd, he turned his fingers and made seals. Ice release, ice dragon bullet technique. As the chakra began to transform, a thick layer of ice condensed on his body surface, and the ice dragon quickly took shape again. It held the 7 frosts in its mouth, scratched the ground with its 5 claws, and immediately rushed towards the launch location of the flare without looking back. The guards were ready to face the attack, but they didn't expect that the ice dragon would ignore them. When they came to their senses, the ice dragon had broken through the encirclement and flew into the heart of the mansion. What is coming will come, don't worry. Chapter 429 Ambush. Boom. Under Qishuang's control, the ice dragon rushed straight to the signal transmission site, ignoring any obstacles on the path. Those short houses, like loose building blocks, were smashed to pieces by the ice dragon in an instant. Unexpectedly, he suddenly broke through the encirclement and rushed in. The servants in the mansion were scared out of their wits and ran away screaming. Unfortunately, their speed was no match for the ninja's magic. Especially those guys who blocked the ice dragon's path were caught up after just 2 steps. If it were normal, Qishuang would be more careful and would not hurt innocent people, but now he had to rush to the signal transmission site as quickly as possible and complete the task in the shortest time, so he didn't care about these poor guys at all. The ice dragon swung through the crowd mercilessly, leaving only a field of bright red blood. Boom. In order to prevent accidental injury to his own people, Qishuang drove the ice dragon directly to bombard a piece of open space next to the signal transmission site. The huge impact force caused the ground within a radius of nearly 10 meters to collapse. Then, he rushed out of the ice dragon in an instant and came to the signal transmission point next door. It was a small courtyard. However, there was no living person around. There was only a ninja corpse with thousands of thorns all over his body on the ground, and an empty shell of a used signal flare next to it. At this moment, he seemed to think of something and hurried to check next to the corpse, only to find that it was one of his team members. Why did he die suddenly? He was a little confused. It took less than half a minute from the time the signal was transmitted to when he arrived here. Although these team members under his command were not top masters, they were definitely elite. Even if they fought with him, they would not be eliminated in half a minute. More importantly, he did not find any signs of fighting around. In other words, this person was probably ambushed by someone and killed in one blow. This also means that there are masters ambushing around. At this moment, there was a sound of breaking air next to him. Qishuang instinctively looked up and saw something like a cannonball, carrying purple tail smoke, flying out from the dark corner next to him. Puff puff puff. Then, dozens of tube-shaped objects were ejected from the shells. Crack, crack, crack. Just as he was puzzled, the dozens of tube-shaped objects broke apart again, and countless tubes shot out in all directions. The dense steel needles rained down in a disorderly manner, covering the entire courtyard without leaving any gaps. Seeing that there was no escape, Qishuang immediately used the ice release chakra mode. Then a light white glow lit up from his body, and the steel needles hit his body, making a crisp sound, and then bounced to the ground. However, the black rain had not stopped yet, and Qishuang sensed a strong breath rushing from behind. He turned his head and saw a dark brown fist enlarged in front of him. At the same time, he also noticed that when the steel needles hit the dark brown fist, they also did not cause any damage, but instead seemed to pierce the steel plate, and were all bounced away. Without time to think too much, he immediately crossed his arms in front of him. Boom. The dark brown fist hit his arms plainly, and a heavy force immediately knocked him out. Boom. The courtyard wall collapsed, and the white figure immediately disappeared in the smoke and dust. Gui Deng Zhang, who was hiding in the distance and watching the battle, immediately said to his son, "Pass the order, everyone retreat, and don't get close to the battlefield." Since someone helped to deal with that difficult guy, he was happy to save energy and not have to sacrifice his life. Moreover, that guy was too difficult to deal with, and their guards couldn't help much, even if they went up, and could only cause trouble. Then, Gui Deng Manayu gave some instructions to a subordinate not far away, and immediately saw him disappear from the spot. Not long after, the guards who followed the traces left by the ice dragon retreated, after receiving the order, and completely surrounded the area. Boom. Pushing away a broken wall that was pressing on him, Qishuang slowly walked out of the ruins. I didn't expect that even you, a traitor from Kirigakure, would come. He looked at the green-eyed ninja in a black windbreaker with red clouds not far away, and shook his head and sighed. The other party wore a forehead protector with a downward pointing arrow mark on it, which was the symbol of Kirigakure. However, there was an extremely discordant scratch on the mark. In order to show that they had broken off the past, every ninja would choose to scratch his ninja forehead protector when he betrayed the village. That scratch was the symbol of betrayal. And Nanushiro not only recognized that the other party was a traitor from Kirigakure, but also recognized that he was one of the core members of the Akatsuki organization, Kakuzu, a man who was said to live as long as the heaven and the earth. Although it was a bit exaggerated, Nanushiro knew that this man had indeed lived long enough. After all, he was a man who had fought with the first generation of Hokage. Looking at the ninja world, he was like a living fossil, much older than Inoki of Iwagakure. At the same time, seeing that Ninashiro was unscathed, Kakuzu was also surprised. I heard from Arfeni before that this guy has a very strong defensive technique, that ordinary attacks are difficult to work. He was a little bit unconvinced at first, but this time he finally saw it. The layer of glittering glow on the opponent's body has a defensive ability that is no less than his earth spear. You know, although the punch he just threw was not very skillful, at that time, he used a kind of earth escape ninjutsu called Earth Spear to bless himself. When using this technique, his whole body will become extremely hard, like diamonds under the ground, or even harder than diamonds. This is also the reason why he dared to launch a surprise attack on the guy in front of him in the rain of thousands of books. A mere steel needle can't hurt him at all. Therefore, under the blessing of this ninjutsu, even without the need for physical skills, his fist will have unimaginable destructive power. But even in this state, this young man in white took his punch and was still able to talk and laugh, which is amazing. It seems that the effect of that guy's body defense technique should be the same level as my earth spear. Moreover, from his tone, he seems to know me. Kakuzu thought silently. Seeing that he was silent and didn't know what he was thinking, Qishuang kicked the tubular mechanism on the ground and shouted to the other corner of the courtyard, "Red Sand Scorpion is here too, why hide and dare not see people?" Then, accompanied by a hoarse voice, a hunched figure walked out from the shadows. "It seems that you know a lot of people." Scorpion adjusted his hat and looked straight at Qishuang. He was very confused as to why the other party recognized his identity. Kakuzu was fine. After all, he showed his face, and with Takinin's forehead protector, it was not difficult to guess his identity, but he only used some mechanisms from beginning to end, and did not show up at all. But even so, his identity was still revealed, which was really puzzling. Chapter 430 Body. How could Scorpion know that Nana Frost knew every core member of their Akatsuki? He was still a little confused when Kakuzu made his move earlier. After all, it was impossible to identify the identity of the attacker with just these 1,000 mechanisms. But Kakuzu's appearance made him quickly confirm that the attacker was Scorpion. Because the members of Akatsuki always work in pairs and perform tasks at the same time. This is to allow them to supervise each other and to take care of each other. After all the members of Akatsuki are rebels who are wanted by various villages. When they go out to perform tasks, they occasionally encounter the pursuit personnel sent by various villages. It will be much safer to have companions to take care of them. Therefore, when Kakuzu made a sneak attack, Nana Frost confirmed that the other person who used the mechanism to attack him was also a member of Akatsuki. Originally, this alone was not enough to confirm Scorpion's identity. But Kakuzu had a bad habit. He loved money very much. He often played dirty to his own people and then exchanged the bodies for money. Therefore, people who were too weak could not perform tasks with Kakuzu. At least he had to be at the same level as Kakuzu, strong enough to ensure that he would not be killed by Kakuzu before he could act with him. As far as Nana Frost knew, in the Akatsuki organization, there was only one ninja who was very strong and good at using mechanisms, Scorpion. The most important thing was that Scorpion was obsessed with puppetry and turned himself into a puppet. Therefore, without a physical body, Scorpion's chakra reaction would be extremely weak. Unlike Kakuzu, whose chakra reaction was sensed by Nana Frost, as soon as he made a move, only Scorpion, who had turned himself into a puppet, could not sense the existence of the other party after making a move. Therefore, he was sure that the person who attacked him with the 1,000 Bones mechanism was the rebel ninja of the Sand Village, the Red Sand Scorpion. Even he could hardly detect Scorpion's existence, so it was no wonder that his 8 subordinates were killed silently by the sneak attack. Have you ever thought that this time, when you come to the Kirigakure, will there be no chance to go back? Nana Frost looked at the two calmly and said, with confidence on her face, "You want to kill us?" Kakuzu was stunned for a moment and mocked him unceremoniously. "This is the first time I have met such an arrogant guy like you. You know, even the first generation of Konoha Hokage didn't kill me. You are too naive." Before he finished speaking, Nanashiro suddenly felt a figure in front of him flash, and Kakuzu rushed in front of him with the instant body technique and smashed the dark brown fist again. Nanashiro, who had been on guard for a long time, did not dodge, but also clenched his fist and went straight to meet him. Bang! The dark brown fist collided with the light white fist, and the huge collision force was finally led into the ground through the arms and legs of both parties. With the two people as the center, the ground within a radius of nearly 10 meters was completely shattered by the collision force, and there was no intact place. After all, Kikuzu's power was stronger. Although he failed to break the chakra coat on Ninashiro's body, he shook Ninashiro away. At this time, Scorpion standing on the other side moved. Although he looked hunched and inconvenient to move, his movement speed was not slow at all. In just a moment, he moved to a place not far behind Qishuang. Then, a sharp iron tail with segments appeared from his back and pierced Qishuang's vest. "Your body looks good. I think it should be suitable to be made into a human puppet." He laughed creepily. Ding. Qishuang had no way to avoid it. Scorpion's sharp iron tail pierced his back. Unfortunately, it did not achieve the result Scorpion expected. His special iron tail pierced the opponent's body, but was blocked by a layer of bright glow, and could not move forward at all, just like piercing a piece of diamond. At this moment, a slightly mocking voice fell into his ears. "Do you think I have never defended against you?" Hearing this, Scorpion thought it was not good, and was about to withdraw the iron tail, but he was still a step too slow. Ice release. Ice sealing technique. Ninashiroang activated the technique the moment Scorpion attacked. Although Scorpion's chakra reaction was weak, he had already exposed his whereabouts, so it was not difficult to lock him. Therefore, Ninashiroang secretly kept his mind when fighting with Kikuzu, ready to counterattack at any time. Then, Scorpion immediately saw a layer of crystal ice crystals condensed on the tip of his iron tail, and the ice crystals spread down along the segmented iron tail, with the potential to freeze him. You know, although the puppeteer's puppet is a product of machinery, it is actually the same as the human body, and the flexibility of the joints is extremely important. And his segmented iron tail can certainly perform a variety of flexible attacks under the control of the chakra line. But now it is frozen and stuck in the joints. It is no different from scrap metal. What's more terrible is that the appearance he showed in front of people at this moment is a pure puppet form, a puppet named Fei Liuhu. The real core is still inside Fei Liuhu. Once the Fei Liuhu was completely frozen, he would be trapped inside without the opportunity to move, which meant that he would be completely out of the battle. Helplessly, he could only shout softly, "Disperse." Then, he saw Scorpion's body torn into pieces and scattered into mechanical parts all over the ground. At the same time, the opposite corner noticed that a black shadow hid far away at the moment when the Fei Liuhu dispersed. Although the breath was weak, he could still recognize that it was the chakra breath of Scorpion. "Are you finally willing to show your true self? But in my eyes, your puppet is just a pile of broken copper and iron. There is no difference between the true self and other puppets." Looking at the scattered mechanical parts on the ground, and then looking at the figure wrapped in a tattered windbreaker not far away, Qishuang shook his head. The true self? The other corner did not rush to attack. After hearing what he said, he looked at the guy with the same breath as Scorpion with curiosity. According to the other party, the Scorpion he saw on weekdays was just a puppet incarnation, and the real body was the handsome boy with red hair. You know, even though they were in the same organization, he had never heard of Scorpion having a body. Now, it was revealed by an outsider, which was really interesting. Scorpion looked at Qishuang coldly and said, "You know a lot. Now, I want to make you my collection even more. Kikuzu, do you have any objection?" As he said that, he cast an inquiring look at the green-eyed man opposite. He knew that Kikuzu practiced a secret technique called Earth Grudge, which could take the heart and meridians from the opponent's body and then implant them into his own body for use. Therefore, Kikuzu also had certain requirements for the body of a ninja. Hearing his companion's question, Kikuzu immediately understood what the other party meant, and he said nonchalantly, "I have no objection." Others only knew that he could take the opponent's heart and meridians for his own use, but no one knew that his Earth Grudge secret technique could only control the heart with the 5 basic attributes. Therefore, even if he coveted the heart of a blood limiter, he could only take it out to look at it, but he could not control it himself. Therefore, he had no intention of competing with Scorpion for the body of this bloodline limiter. referring to the part where Chiyo's mechanical arm was stuck by the iron sand. The restraint of the ice release freezing effect is more serious than that. Chapter 431 Restraint. At the same time, the father and son of Hazuki Masamune, who were hiding in the dark and watching the battle, also recognized the identities of the two people who attacked Qishuang. "Who are you? You can even mobilize the red sand scorpion and the immortal ninja." Hazuki Masamune stared at the one-eyed mask and said with a fearful tone. The two were very famous S-level rebel ninjas in the ninja world. They were very dangerous and had repeatedly escaped the pursuit of various villages. Many ninja villages were very afraid of them. But such a dangerous guy was actually recruited by this one-eyed mask. It was really unbelievable. He couldn't help but start to doubt whether it was right or wrong for him to cooperate with such a mysterious guy. "Me." Arfei stared at the battlefield intently and said casually, "I'm just a ghost from the past." Huh. Seeing that he had no intention of answering, Hazuki Masamune had no choice but to snort coldly and secretly raised his vigilance. On the battlefield, Kakuzu asked his companion with understanding, "His ice escape seems to be quite effective against your puppets. Do you want me to help?" He noticed that a thick layer of ice crystals had frozen onto the parts of Scorpion's Feng Liuhu, and some parts had even completely lost their ability to move. Although he didn't know how to use puppetry, he knew that when the parts were frozen and the puppet lost its ability to move, it was no different from scrap metal. "No need." Scorpion took off his tattered windbreaker, revealing a puppet-like body with 4 scrolls on its back and a big red scorpion printed on its left chest. While guarding against Qishuang, he said to his companion, "I can handle it myself. Just help me guard the surroundings and don't let him run away." As he said that, he took a scroll from his back with his backhand. Qishuang stood there quietly watching, without any intention of taking the initiative, nor did he have the opportunity, because there was another horn next to him who was watching closely. However, he was not worried at all, because he knew that Scorpion, as a puppeteer, had some very fatal weaknesses. Puppet masters rely on puppet mechanisms to kill people, so they are very lacking in offensive power and cannot be compared with ninjutsu. Take the earlier wave of Senbon Rain for example. The impact force is completely insufficient, and it is not much stronger than an ordinary person's bare-handed throw. It fell on Manashuang's body, just like drizzle. Although it looks very powerful, the actual impact on him is not as good as Kakuzu's punch. This is the first. Second, in order to make up for the lack of offensive power and improve the efficiency of killing, puppeteers usually choose to poison their mechanical weapons. As long as they scratch the opponent's skin, their weapons will cause fatal damage. As a top puppeteer, Scorpion naturally poisoned his weapons, and it was highly toxic. A little touch can kill people. But unfortunately, the offensive power is not enough, and Scorpion's weapon has no chance to break through his body's chakra coat, so the highly toxic weapon is naturally ineffective against him. The third and most important point. The puppeteer uses chakra lines to control the puppets, and then fights with the help of the puppet mechanism. They rely too much on the puppets. Once the puppets have problems, everything will be over. The puppet mechanism is actually just a pile of sophisticated mechanical structure toys. Just slightly destroy their active structure, and all the puppets will become a pile of scrap metal. Just like in his memory, Scorpion used the iron sand of the third Kazakage to jam the puppet mechanism structure of Chiyo Granny, making it ineffective. His ice can also play the same effect, or even better than iron sand. Iron sand can at least be cleaned up slowly, but once frozen by his ice, Scorpion will no longer have the opportunity to clean it up, and even because of the ice, there will be no chance to disassemble and reassemble. You know, because of its own structure, the puppet mechanism can be quickly reassembled, even if it is broken up, or the puppeteer can manipulate part of the structure to launch a surprise attack on the enemy, which has extremely high flexibility and mobility. But if it is frozen by the ice of Qishuang, it will be completely hopeless. This is also the reason why Scorpion hid in the Fei Liuhu and found that there was a risk of being frozen, so he desperately dismantled the Fei Liuhu and escaped. The restraint of ice escape on the puppet mechanism is too serious. Let me show you my most proud collection. In the future, you will also become one of my collections. Scorpion slowly opened the scroll. With the rise of white smoke, a gray-black puppet appeared in front of several people. It is indeed it. Seeing the face of the puppet clearly, Qishuang showed a meaningful smile. You know? Scorpion frowned. This young man in white not only knows him, but also knows the puppet in his hand. This is not a good thing for him, because it means that the other party may know him very well. On the contrary, he himself doesn't know much about this young man. He only knows that he is good at ice escape and has super strong defense. The information of both sides is not equal, and they may suffer a great loss during the battle. Of course I know him. After all, he is the famous third generation wind shadow of the Sand Village, known as the strongest wind shadow of all generations. Qishuang said to him playfully. When the origin of the puppet was revealed, Scorpion could not help but feel an ominous feeling in his heart. Although he seldom used this puppet in front of others, it was not that he had never used it before, so it was not surprising that someone knew something about it. However, what worried him was that the other party might know more than that. At the same time, Kakuzu on the other side was also shocked. He never thought that the unremarkable puppet in Scorpion's hand actually had such a great origin. I still remember that the fuse of the third Shinobi World War was the disappearance of the third generation Kazakage of Sand Village. Sand Village paid a huge price to find the third generation Kazakage. In the end, no clues were found, and the third generation Kazakage seemed to have evaporated from the face of the earth. Who knew that the third generation, known as the strongest Kazakage, died quietly in the hands of Scorpion, a rebel ninja of Sand Village, and his body was made into a human puppet by him. It's really ridiculous, pitiful, and sad. After sticking invisible chakra lines to the puppet beside him, Scorpion said coldly, "What if you know its origin? Can you block the attack of the strongest wind shadow?" After that, he gently hooked his index finger and saw the third wind shadow's body make a creaking sound of mechanism collision, and then trembled slightly and moved. Then, the wind shadow puppet opened its left hand to Qishuang from a distance, and the mechanisms on its arm opened one by one, like a cornstalk with distinct branches and leaves. Then, countless mechanical arms stretched out from the mechanical leaves, crowded together, and rushed towards Qishuang like a giant dragon. I said, "Your puppet is a pile of broken copper and iron in front of me, meaningless." Qishuang shook his head, without any intention of dodging, just standing quietly in place, and forming a group of hand seals. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 432 Suppression. Before the giant dragon made of mechanical hands reached Qishuang, he raised his left hand. Ice escape, ice sealing technique. White cold smoke curled out from his hand, drifting towards the mechanical hand slowly but quickly. Just when Kakuzu thought that Scorpion's attack had hit him, he saw that many mechanical hands suddenly stopped in midair. Looking closely again, he saw that a layer of crystal ice had condensed on the front of the mechanical hand that was in contact with the cold smoke. Scorpion's mechanical hand was frozen. What the hell is that guy Scorpion doing? Knowing that he will be frozen, how dare he use mechanical weapons to attack directly? Seeing this scene, Kakuzu couldn't help but frown secretly. Then, his question was answered. Behind the many mechanical hands, in the position that had not been frozen, another mechanical cover was opened, and a thick purple smoke spurted out from it. Oh no, Scorpion has released poison. Kakuzu hurriedly retreated. Although his earth spear can make him have an indestructible body, he still seems helpless in the face of the poison. After all, it was physiological damage, not physical damage. Although Scorpion's poisonous smoke could not really kill him, if he was hit by it accidentally, he would lose face. At the same time, Qishuang was also shocked when he noticed that Scorpion used the mechanical hand attack as a cover to launch a poisonous fog attack. Like Kakuzu, his ice release chakra mode was also not immune to this kind of attack through poisonous fog, because he needed to breathe like a normal person. Then, he increased the output of chakra to maintain the technique, but slightly adjusted the range of the technique. He also included himself in the effect of the ice sealing technique. The ice crystal still spread to the back of the mechanical arm, but Qishuang, the caster, was also frozen in it and disappeared in the purple poisonous smoke. Scorpion could not see what was going on inside because of the poisonous fog, but he could see that the ice crystals were still firmly spreading to his wind shadow puppet. Obviously, even though the man was submerged in the poisonous fog, he still did not stop casting the technique. What an annoying guy. Scorpion felt helpless and had to separate the wind shadow puppet from the mechanical arm to prevent it from being frozen together. It was just a few mechanical arms, nothing to be reluctant about. He didn't want to lose a big picture for the small. Boom. Without the support of the wind shadow puppet, the mechanical arm fell to the ground in an instant. The many poisonous smoke nozzles on it had long been frozen, and not a trace of poisonous smoke could be sprayed out. Even the various mechanical weapons on the mechanical arm could no longer be used. Because his chakra line was stuck on it, not even a small puppet knot could make it move again. After completely freezing himself, Qishuang hid in the ice layer and formed another set of hand seals and injected chakra through the ice layer and into his feet. Water style, great waterfall technique. After the chakra was transformed by the nature of water, it turned into a blue spring gushing out from his foothold and instantly lifted the ice and himself into the air. Then the spring turned into a huge wave, rushing towards the surroundings. The thick purple poisonous smoke was washed away by the several meter high waves, and immediately turned into nothingness, disappearing completely. The half-collapsed courtyard walls around it fell down helplessly after being washed by this wave, and several houses next to it were not spared, and were completely destroyed by the waves. Kakuzu had retreated early to avoid the poisonous smoke, so when the big wave hit, he took advantage of the situation and stepped back a few steps and was not affected at all. But Scorpion, who was closer to Qishuang, was not so lucky. Because he was a puppet, he had no substantial flesh, no longer needed to breathe, and was not afraid of physical damage, so he could use a lot of poisonous smoke without any taboos and put himself and the enemy in the range of the poisonous smoke. Because he was unprepared and the poisonous smoke blocked his vision, he had no time to react to the sudden water escape attack and was immediately submerged and swept in by the waves. What can a mere water escape do to me? My body has no meaning to me anymore, he thought nonchalantly as he was caught in the waves. At this moment, Qishuang, who was lifted into the air by the spring, stepped out of the ice layer and stepped steadily on the water. After quickly flipping his fingers, he stomped his foot lightly and injected chakra into the waves under his feet. Ice escape ice sealing technique. Using the chakra that he had just injected as a guide, he caused the rest of the chakra in the waves to undergo new changes. Ice is another form of water, and the two can transform into each other. Therefore, he can make the chakra that has been transformed into water attribute transform into ice attribute chakra again. But he cannot use ice attribute chakra to transform into wind attribute chakra associated with it. Then, he saw that the waves stopped surging with his landing point as the center, and the water condensed into ice. This change spread in all directions at an unimaginable speed. It was far faster than the speed at which he had frozen his mechanical arm just now. This is because the transmission of chakra takes time and cannot be transmitted from one place to another out of thin air. You know, even the transmission of light takes time, not to mention the chakra energy. But this big wave is made of his own chakra, that is to say, wherever the big wave reaches, it has been covered by his chakra. To freeze the target, it is naturally no longer necessary to conduct ice attribute chakra to it. It only needs to convert the existing water attribute chakra into ice attribute, and the speed will naturally be much faster. Once the opponent ignores his water escape and comes into direct contact with his water escape, he will be hit by his ice escape immediately. Therefore, the water escape ninjutsu that Qishuang just performed, in addition to the purpose of dispersing the poisonous smoke, also confuses Scorpion and prepares to use ice escape next. At the same time, Scorpion, who was still struggling in the big wave, saw the water flow freezing, and he didn't understand the opponent's idea. It's a pity that he was caught in the big wave and couldn't help himself, and he couldn't avoid the upcoming danger of freezing. Kakuzu, who was far away, saw this scene and was also helpless. The water escape suddenly changed to ice escape. This change was unexpected. Even if he wanted to help, it was too late. Seeing that the freezing force was coming in the blink of an eye, Scorpion hooked the chakra line on his finger again, and the wind shadow puppet opened its puppet-like mouth, and a puff of black smoke floated out. Then, the black smoke lingered behind the wind shadow puppet, and turned into a pair of black wings. It flapped its wings, and rushed out of the water like a seagull, and through the connection of the chakra line, it also pulled Scorpion's body out of the surge. But unfortunately, his speed was still a step slower. The wind shadow puppet pulled half of his body out of the water, but the other half was still underwater. It was frozen in the water in an instant, and could not move. Seeing that the freezing of the lower body was still spreading upwards, Scorpion gritted his teeth and immediately split his puppet body apart. He simply abandoned his lower body and let the wind shadow puppet carry his upper body into the air, thus completely escaping the danger of being frozen. Chapter 433 Evil Intentions. Seeing this, Maingetsu Kizuki in the dark mercilessly mocked Afei, your friend is just a little bit away from being killed by others. Aren't you worried at all? Although he was harsh in words, he was very afraid of the guy called Scorpion in his heart. Puppet masters rely most on puppet mechanisms. Their bodies are very weak. Once they lose the protection of puppet mechanisms, they are no different from fat sheep waiting to be slaughtered. Of course, their bodies are weak only compared to ordinary ninjas. Therefore, for their own safety, most puppet masters will keep a certain distance from their opponents and remotely control puppets to fight. But the Red Sand Scorpion made himself a puppet, and he could disassemble and assemble his body at will. He didn't have to worry about being attacked by others, and he also avoided the weakness of the puppet master himself. It was really incredible. In addition, he was amazed at the fighting power that Qishuang had burst out. After only a few rounds of fighting, he almost forced the Red Sand Scorpion into a desperate situation. Although the puppet mechanism was restrained by the ice escape, the Red Sand Scorpion was notorious and was not a weakling. He could not help but re-evaluate Qishuang's true strength. Beside him, Afei narrowed his right eye, stared at the battlefield and said, if he died like this, he would not be the Red Sand Scorpion. Just now, he was also worried for Scorpion. The situation changed too quickly. He did not react at all, and Scorpion was at a disadvantage, and was forced into a desperate situation. Even if his right eye had the ability to move through time and space, it was too late to rescue him. Fortunately, Scorpion decisively gave up half of his puppet body, otherwise, once he was frozen in it, he would have died. It was too thrilling. Even he did not expect that Qishuang's ice escape would have such a great restraining effect on the puppet mechanism. If he had known this earlier, he should not have asked Scorpion to come to help. It's a pity that knowing earlier is worth a lot of money. The reason why he chose Sasori and Kakuzu was not only because they were strong enough, but also because they both had the ability to cause mass destruction, which could add fuel to the civil war in Kirigakure. Now it seems that he was not well considered. At the same time, seeing Sasori's puppet body split into two, Kakuzu was also stunned for a moment, until Sasori used the chakra line to pull himself on the back of the Kazakage puppet. He reacted. Sasori made himself a puppet as well. On the battlefield outside, explosions were heard one after another, and the sound of killing was deafening. Although Terumi Medi was kidnapped by Zabuza, no one knew about this situation, because the upper level blocked the news. The war was still advancing in an orderly manner under the command of the headquarters. On the other hand, the Hazuki faction was assassinated and destroyed by the elite team sent by Terumi Medi's family in the rear, causing great chaos, causing panic on the front line and a decline in the war situation. At the Hashigaki family, a shark-faced man, carrying a huge weapon wrapped in bandages, saluted to another shark-faced man at the main seat and said, Master Kiichi, according to reliable intelligence, Terumi Medi has been kidnapped. It's just that the top leaders of the Terumi family deliberately blocked the news, so the people below don't know about it yet. That's great. Kiichi Hashigaki, who was at the main seat, showed a cruel smile and said, send an order someone to spread this news, so that everyone on the front line of Terumi's family will know this news. Also, secretly order our frontline people to retain their strength. It's time to close a net. Hearing the young clan leader's order, two ninjas immediately disappeared on the spot. Kisame, how are you preparing? Kiichi Hoshigaki asked the shark-faced man carrying a huge weapon below. Be ready at any time, my clan leader. The man called Hoshigaki Kisame lowered his head, looking loyal. Kiichi Hoshigaki looked down at him and said, that's good, but don't let anything go wrong for me at this time. Soon, the news that the young patriarch of the Terumi family was kidnapped again spread like wildfire on the front line. The people of Terumi's faction were in a state of panic, and the Hazuki faction seized the opportunity to fight back desperately, and the originally advantageous situation rebounded again. Fortunately, with the great efforts of the Terumi senior management to appease them, the battle line was finally stabilized, but because of this news, people's hearts were in a state of panic, and everyone's fighting spirit inevitably declined. For a time, the number of casualties on both sides rose sharply. The Hoshigaki faction, which received a secret order to preserve its strength, quietly reduced its offensive momentum, causing the pressure of the Hazuki faction to shift to the Terumi faction, making the battle between Terumi and Hazuki even more tragic. In the heart of the Hazuki family, Qishuang looked at the half-frozen puppet body in the ice and shook her head helplessly. Just a little bit. Scorpion was completely frozen by him. Unfortunately, he still escaped. Scorpion's puppet body is also an immortal body in a sense, which can be disassembled and assembled at will. Except for the vital part of the heart, there are almost no flaws. Therefore, abandoning half of the puppet body is not a fatal injury to Scorpion. He can take out another puppet to reorganize and improve himself. And Qishuang clearly remembered that among the scrolls on Scorpion's back, there was one that sealed hundreds of puppets, which was also Scorpion's spare body. Then, in the surprised eyes of everyone, Scorpion took another scroll from his back, took out a puppet from it, disassembled its lower body, and calmly assembled it on his own body. Don't you really need help, Scorpion? Kakuzu stood on a half-collapsed house, looking at the red-haired boy on the back of the Fengiying puppet and asked loudly. Judging from the current situation, Scorpion's chances of winning are not great, and he and the guy named Qishuang can't do anything to each other. Without Scorpion's help, it would be extremely difficult to take down the opponent. If it weren't for the situation, he wouldn't want to be this good guy. Scorpion threw down the disassembled half of the puppet and subconsciously wanted to answer no need, but when he thought of the critical scene just now, he swallowed it and said in a complicated tone, you can do it yourself. He did not directly refuse or agree. Hearing this, Kakuzu immediately understood that Scorpion was too embarrassed to ask for help, but still expected his help. Then, he jumped down from the roof and rushed straight towards Qishuang along the ice surface. Lightning release. Pseudo-dark. After quickly forming a group of hand seals, he opened his mouth and spit out a huge blow-up of electricity at Qishuang. Boom. The lightning struck the ice, leaving only a shallow dent, and it was not completely penetrated as Kakuzu thought. The hardness of the ice was far beyond his imagination. What surprised him even more was that the lightning did not hit the target at all, and it felt like the man disappeared in an instant. He's behind you. Scorpion stood on the back of the wind shadow puppet and reminded loudly. Taking advantage of his high position, he had a full view of the entire battlefield. However, his warning was still a little late. Nanoshuang used Ice Escape Instant Body to avoid the lightning strike, moved behind Kakuzu, and punched him directly. Chapter 434, Tricky. Because the opponent's position changed too suddenly, Kakuzu had no time to dodge, and had to use the Earth Spear to harden his whole body, to deal with the sudden attack from behind. Boom. Qishuang's cold fist hit Kakuzu's back without any fancy moves, making a dull sound. However, based on the touch of his hand, he knew very clearly that this punch did not hurt the opponent at all. It was like punching a wall made of diamond, with no effect. Only Kakuzu, who was standing on the smooth ice, could not keep his footing at all, and slid straight down the ice. Just as Qishuang was about to chase, he felt something pressing down on his head. He instinctively looked up, and saw a black square cone with a width of 10 meters, spinning rapidly and poking at his head. The magnetic style of the third Kazakage? Qishuang saw it, and immediately used the ice-style instant body to sink into the ice layer and disappeared. Scorpion has a special technique to turn human corpses into human puppets. After being made into human puppets, those corpses will retain most of the abilities of their original owners. With the help of human puppets, Scorpion can also exert the power of those people before they died. The third generation, known as the strongest Kazakage, possesses the bloodline limit power of magnetic escape, which is said to be the result of the research of the sand village on the one-tailed Shukaku. He can use this to make chakra show the characteristics of magnetism, and use this magnetism to manipulate sand iron at will, making any metal weapon ineffective against it. And the huge black square cone is made of densely packed sand iron. With such a large volume, the weight alone is calculated in tons. Then, using the momentum to smash from a high altitude, even if Nanami's chakra coat can withstand this impact without being destroyed, he himself will be injured by the huge force. If he can avoid it, he naturally doesn't want to fight it like a fool. Boom. The black square cone fell on the ice surface. In just a moment, the huge impact force broke Nanami's ice surface and stabbed it deeply. On the other side, Kakuzu, who had just stabilized his position, saw it and couldn't help but shrink his pupils slightly. He had never thought that a puppet master could exert such a strong power. Taking this opportunity, Scorpion landed on the ground again, but he was careful not to land on the ice surface of Qishuang, but on an open space at the edge of the frozen field. Although it was safe to stay in the sky with the wind shadow puppet, it would also limit the flexibility of the wind shadow puppet, which would not be conducive to his controlling the wind shadow puppet to attack. Then, watching Qishuang's figure reappear on the ice surface, he used the blood limit of the wind shadow puppet to once again launch the ninjutsu of the third wind shadow. Magnetic release. Sand iron rain chakra was transformed by the wind shadow puppet, and the characteristics of magnetism were derived. The black square cone deep in the ice layer underwent new changes. Qishuang avoided the square cone from a distance, and just as he showed his head, he saw the square cone suddenly collapse and turned into a piece of black raindrops that bounced in all directions. The black rain was extremely fast, and it was in front of him in the blink of an eye. Qishuang, who had just used the ice release instant body technique, could not use it again. The overwhelming black rain made him unable to avoid it. Fortunately, the scattered sand iron was not heavy in each piece. Even though it was very fast, the impact force brought by each sand iron was far less than that of the 10-meter wide square cone. The human body could not block such a level of impact, but Qishuang's chakra coat was more than enough to deal with them. Therefore, even if he could not avoid it, Qishuang still did not have to worry about his safety. Rustle. The black rain hit him, and he felt like someone was holding a long sword and stabbing him quickly at a speed faster than the speed of sound. The sword pierced his body surface, but it could not penetrate his chakra coat at all, and could only bring him a dense and slight tingling sensation. Apart from this, it had no substantial effect. At the same time, Kakuzu took off his windbreaker with a black background and red clouds, revealing a strange stitch-like scar. The people watching the battle in the dark, including Masamune Kizuna, clearly saw that he had 4 masks of different shapes on his back. Then, the suture-like scars on his body opened up, and 4 strange masks with black tentacles emerged from his back, with the masks as heads and the tentacles as bodies, turning into 4 strange black humanoid monsters. They were special clones derived from his Earth Grudge secret technique. With the help of the Earth Grudge secret technique, he could extract the opponent's heart and meridians from the body and put them into his own body for control. For every extra heart, he had 1 more life. The upper limit of this secret technique is 5, so he has 5 hearts and 5 lives. Because of practicing this secret technique, his body has changed, which is very different from the flesh and blood of ordinary people. He can constantly replace his heart to prolong his life, so he got the title of Immortal Ninja. Not only that, he can also use this secret technique to make the hearts that he has taken into his body appear in the world again as masked monsters, becoming his own unique clones, and each mastering a power. You know, because those clones are based on the hearts he has taken away after separating the body again, they are equivalent to an independent individual and life, which is no different from his original body, and is fundamentally different from ordinary chakra clones. In this way, he is equivalent to 5 people, and can exert 5 powers at the same time with his own strength. This is a terrifying forbidden technique he took from the Kirigakure village, Earth Grudge. While the black rain has not yet dissipated, Kakuzu's 4 masked clones dispersed in 4 directions, and surrounded Nana Frost in the middle. Then, the 4 clones successively cast spells and launched an offensive. Water style. Water Fang Bullet. The masked clone with the water attribute heart as the core was the first to attack. It spit out a high-speed rotating water cone and stabbed it directly at the white figure in the middle. Lightning Release. Pseudo Darkness. The clone with the lightning attribute heart as the core followed closely behind, and it opened its mouth and spit out a blue lightning, which landed on the water bullet in front. Then the lightning and the water bullet merged, turning into a cone with electric light, and it arrived in front of Qishuang in the blink of an eye. Knowing that Kakuzu's ninjutsu attack was fierce, Qishuang did not intend to resist it, and once again escaped into the ice layer. Because, using ice release, chakra mode to resist such an attack would increase his chakra loss. The reason why the chakra coat can defend against the opponent's attack is not that such a defensive ability is born out of thin air. Its fundamental principle is to use one's own chakra to offset the opponent's chakra in the operation, so as to achieve a defensive effect. It is a bit like attacking against attack, and offsetting each other. The chakra mode uses a special structure of the technique to reduce the amount of chakra used to offset the opponent, and use a small amount of chakra to play a multiplied offset effect. That's why various chakra modes have extremely terrible defensive capabilities. Reducing unnecessary consumption is one of them, and more importantly, Qishuang has to guard against a Fei who has not appeared. It is definitely not a coincidence that Scorpion and Horn appear here. It is very likely that they are helpers that are Fei deliberately transferred to deal with him. Chapter 435 Clone. Now that Fei has not been seen for a long time, it is impossible for him to turn a blind eye to the battle here. Qishuang would rather believe that the other party is hiding in the dark and waiting for an opportunity. Therefore, his enemies are definitely not just Scorpion and Kakuzu. In addition, there are also people from the Kido family. At this moment, he is deep behind enemy lines and surrounded, but except for the guards of the Kido family, he has not even seen the face of Kido Maingetsu. Those guards are fine, they can't pose any threat to him at all. But Kido Maingetsu is different. Kido Maingetsu is the strongest person in the Kido family. He has 4 ninja swords in his hands, but because of his physical condition, he rarely goes to the front line and stays in the rear most of the time. Qishuang made such a big noise, but Kido Maingetsu did not show up to stop it. This is absolutely abnormal. It is very likely that the other party is also hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity. Therefore, he must be extremely cautious and vigilant at all times. Boom. The high pressure water cone, wrapped in the power of lightning, bombarded the ice surface. The combined power of the two immediately opened a big hole in the originally hard ice layer, revealing the broken stone floor underneath. Although the attack was fruitless, Kakuzu was not discouraged. He and the other 2 masked clones were still searching for the disappeared white figure. After witnessing the opponent's teleportation several times, his rich life experience made him gradually understand that Nana Shuang's teleportation ability is a kind of ice escape stealth technique that can move quickly in the ice layer. That means that the opponent's movement range will never exceed this 100-meter ice escape area. Now, he and the 4 masked clones have a total of 5 pairs of eyes, searching in different directions, and the opponent will never escape his sight. At this time, the masked clone with the fire attribute heart discovered Nana Shuang, who appeared again. Fire escape. Head hard work. It immediately opened its masked mouth and spit out a wave of fire that covered the sky and the earth at the white figure not far away. At the moment when the fire masked clone took action, Kakuzu's wind masked clone followed closely. Because wind can fuel the fire, making the fire escape more terrifying. So the 2 often work together, just like the cooperation between water and thunder just now. Wind escape suppress harm. Then, the wind mask clone spit out a strong wind, and after merging into the fire wave that was originally more than 20 meters wide suddenly surged to more than 50 meters wide, as mighty as a volcanic riot, and it was out of control. In the blink of an eye, the white figure that had just emerged was engulfed in the fire wave. Whoosh. The strong wind swept past with the fire wave. Seeing that the fire wave was still spreading, the guards on the edge of the battlefield were afraid that the surrounding houses would be ignited and cause a fire. Under the command of the commander, they uniformly performed water escape ninjutsu to prevent the battle damage. Water escape, water array wall, water escape, water array wall, water escape, water array wall. In just a moment, everyone spit out a torrent of water, building a blue water curtain at the edge of the battlefield. Zzz. The fire wave hit the water curtain with infinite power and finally stopped spreading. However, the scorching heat evaporated a lot of water in an instant, turning it into mist that filled the battlefield. The environment of the hidden mist village has always been foggy. After the addition of this mist, nothing can be seen on the battlefield. The wind and fire mask clones launched a joint attack, and Kakuzu's main body was not idle either. Although his vision was poor, he still locked the white figure in the fire wave with chakra sensing. Taking advantage of the mask clone's cover, he stretched out his arms, and his two hands turned dark brown again, and then his arms were cut off from the elbows, revealing the grey-black tentacles twisted together like a braid. Then, his two arms blessed by the earth spear was seen, like a projectile being ejected, dragging long tentacles, and instantly rushed into the sea of fire, tightly pinching the neck of the white figure. Finally caught you, a nasty rat. Kakuzu's tone was full of disdain. However, when he exerted a little force with both hands, and prepared to drag it to his side, the white figure was immediately crushed by his own hands. It was broken into a pile of ice chips. How is it possible? He subconsciously exclaimed. The guy's body surface defensibility is not inferior to his own, and it should not be so fragile. At this moment, two hands suddenly stretched out from the ice layer under his feet, and took advantage of his distraction to instantly grab his legs. Ice release, ice sealing technique. Then, a layer of ice crystal spread up along his legs from his ankles. Damn bastard, you dare to fool me with an ice release clone. Kakuzu roared angrily when he noticed the change. Until this time, he didn't understand that the other party used an ice release clone to attract firepower first, while the real body was lurking under the ice layer waiting for an opportunity to attack. Earth escape, earth spear. Then, he immediately used the earth spear to bless his whole body. While his knees were not frozen yet, he quickly raised his right foot, pulled out a section of the figure in the ice, and then stomped it hard. Although their body surface defense strengths were comparable, Kakuzu's own strength was much stronger than Qishuang's. This was also the change brought about by the Earth Grudge secret technique. After transforming the body, combined with the Earth Spear, it could instantly burst out with terrifying power. However, the Earth Spear brought strong defense capabilities by hardening the body. At the same time, it would hinder the movement of the body's joints, thus affecting the flexibility of the caster. Therefore, Kakuzu usually only use the Earth Spear locally most of the time, and rarely use the Earth Spear to bless the whole body. Bang! The ice crystals had just spread to the knees when Kakuzu's right foot fell again. A huge collision force was generated between his soles and the ice surface, spreading in all directions. The ice crystals that were about to spread to his waist were immediately shattered by the force of the collision, and even the ice surface where he landed was not spared, and the ice layer of more than 5 meters in radius was broken into pieces. It was also thanks to Kakuzu that he had such power to break the ice of 7 frost, but it was only within this area of more than 5 meters. If it were other ninjas without special strength, it would be hard to say whether they could leave a trace on the ice. Where can you run this time? Looking at the slightly embarrassed figure in the ice layer under his feet, Kakuzu frowned and shouted. At the same time, his arms that crushed the ice clone also returned to his side under the guidance of the grey-black tentacles, and reached out to the young man in white again. However, before his arms touched the other's neck, the white figure turned into a pile of ice chips again, and scattered on the ice layer. Damn it. Seeing this scene, Kakuzu immediately cursed. He was tricked by an ice clone again. At the moment, when Kakuzu was attacked by the 7 Frost Ice Escape clone, a white figure quickly jumped out from the ice, and pounced straight towards Scorpion, who was searching for the enemy on the other side. Chapter 436 Floor. Qishuang used 2 clones to attract Kakuzu's attention, and took the opportunity to attack Scorpion. Kakuzu's ninjutsu firepower was too strong, and it was difficult for him to get the upper hand with the 2 of them working together. He had to kill one first, before he had a chance to kill the other. Especially now, while Maingetsu and Afei were still waiting for the opportunity, he had to kill one by surprise. Otherwise, if he waited for them to attack, he would be outnumbered and would not only have a hard time killing them, but he would also be in danger. Between Scorpion and Kakuzu had 5 hearts and 5 lives, plus the powerful defense provided by the Earth Spear, so he was not an opponent that could be killed in a short time. Even in a one-on-one fight, Qishuang was not sure that he could kill him completely, not to mention that there were enemies lurking around. As for Scorpion, although he turned himself into a puppet body, he could reassemble his body with other puppet parts, no matter how damaged it was, and it looked no different from an immortal body. But his puppet body left a very fatal flaw. That is the puppet part with the red word Scorpion tattooed on the heart position on his left chest, the regeneration core. That is the source of Scorpion's chakra and the will of Scorpion. No matter how exquisite Scorpion's puppet is, there is a problem that he can never solve. Because chakra is a mixture of human vitality and mental power, it must be combined with these two to become chakra energy used by people. And the puppet itself is a dead object. It does not have vitality and mental power at all, and cannot produce chakra out of thin air. Even if Scorpion's special human puppet is made of human corpses, because the human puppet's flesh body dies, the vitality no longer exists. As for mental power, because the soul of the original owner of the corpse enters the pure land, it cannot be obtained out of thin air. Therefore, the human puppet itself does not have any possibility of refining chakra. The reason why Scorpion can use the Wind Shadow puppet to exert the unique magnetic escape power of the 3rd generation Wind Shadow is that he uses his own chakra as a power, and after the transformation of the Wind Shadow puppet, he can reproduce the magnetic escape of the Wind Shadow. The reason why the regeneration core on Scorpion's left chest can provide him with chakra is because the regeneration core is the only organ in his body that he has not turned into a puppet. A living heart. A heart that hosts Scorpion's soul. The living heart provides him with vitality, and the soul provides him with mental power. The combination of the two produces the chakra that drives his puppet body. The regeneration core comes from this. Any part of Scorpion's body, except the regeneration core, can be reassembled and repaired with the parts of other puppets. But if the regeneration core is damaged, it means that his life has come to an end. Therefore, Qishuang only needs to break Scorpion's regeneration core to completely kill Scorpion, who seems to be an immortal puppet. The most important thing is that, although Scorpion has made himself a human puppet and hidden many puppet mechanisms on his body, the fragile characteristics of the puppet master's body have not changed. He looks very powerful on the outside, but he is actually very superficial on the inside. This feature is particularly prominent after the puppet mechanism is restrained by his ice escape. Seeing Qishuang's feint to the east and attack in the west, Scorpion did not dare to neglect it, and immediately controlled the Wind Shadow puppet to perform ninjutsu to meet the enemy. Magnetic release, sand iron boundary technique in the air. 2 sand iron blocks that were condensed into a cone and a block by magnetic force suddenly collided with each other above his head. Then, under the interaction of the 2 sand iron blocks with opposite magnetic fields, the originally condensed sand iron dispersed, and under the action of the magnetic field, it followed an irregular track and turned into sand iron columns that spread and expanded around. It was like a germinating seed, growing rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye, and those sand iron columns that spread irregularly around were the branches of the seed growing into a big tree. In an instant, with Scorpion as the center, the area of dozens of meters around turned into a sand iron jungle. Originally, all these sand irons were quenched with poison by him, and with the irregular spreading method of sand iron, once the opponent was covered in the range of the technique, even if the sharpened sand iron columns were not poked into a honeycomb, they would inevitably be scratched or something. In the end, those people would be completely killed by the poison contained in the iron sand. However, the guy in front of him had a terrible defensive technique. The iron sand in this state could not break through the defense of his body surface, and the poison in the iron sand was useless. However, despite knowing that the move was useless, Scorpion still resolutely chose to launch this move. Because the opponent's ice escape was too restraining for him, Scorpion was unwilling to let him get close anyway. Therefore, he used the 3rd generation of Kazukage's big killer move as a barrier to prevent the opponent from getting close. Despite this, in order to deal with the opponent, Qishuang still rushed in without hesitation. However, Kakuzu's mind mask clone also caught up at this time. One was setting mines behind him, and the other was setting water behind him, chasing him and launching an ninjutsu offensive. Although it was difficult to shuttle through the messy iron sand jungle while avoiding the attacks of two mask clones, Nana Qishuang was not too uncomfortable. Because Kakuzu's two mask clones were considerately clearing the obstacles in the iron sand jungle for him. Seeing this, Scorpion shouted to his companions on the other side, "Kakuzu, control your clones, don't let them destroy my iron sand." Having just dealt with the ice clone under his feet, Kakuzu heard Scorpion's call again, and then he saw the white figure in the iron sand jungle being chased by his two clones. There was no doubt that it was the opponent's real body, but because of Scorpion, he had to order the lightning clone to temporarily stop attacking, and only the water clone continued to attack. Because the direct destructive power of water is weaker than that of lightning, not only will it not destroy Scorpion's iron sand barrier, but it can also pass through the iron sand jungle and directly attack the opponent. Then, he and the wind and fire clones chased after it. On the other side, seeing that Kakuzu's lightning clone stopped attacking, Kakuzu himself and the wind and fire clones chased after him. Qishuang couldn't help but sigh secretly. The time that the ice clone can delay is too short. After all, the clone is just a clone. No matter how advanced it is, it can never be compared to the original body. His ice clone only has 1/3 of the strength of the original body, and can only help him gain a time difference with Kakuzu, which is already the limit. He must take advantage of the opportunity before Kakuzu catches up, quickly pass through the sand iron jungle, and kill the Scorpion inside in one fell swoop. At this moment, Kakuzu's water mask clone spit out another high pressure water cone at the periphery of the sand iron jungle. The water cone slowed down slightly when it entered the sand iron jungle, and then it passed through the crisscrossing sand iron jungle unscathed and hit him straight again. There is a way. Seeing this scene, Qishuang's mind flashed a light, and he immediately had an idea. Then, he opened his right hand towards the attacking high pressure water cone. Ice escape ice sealing technique. Chapter 437 Water Control. I saw a wisp of cold air coming out of Qishuang's right palm. As soon as the water cone came into contact, it condensed into a huge ice bullet, like a white candied horse, pierced on a black sand iron skewer. What? Seeing this scene, Kakuzu, who came from behind, was shocked. It was the first time he encountered an ice ninja who could freeze the opponent's water escape. Scorpion on the other side was not idle either. After building a black jungle barrier with sand iron, he quickly opened the mechanism cover on his right chest, and strands of chakra lines shot out from it, replacing his hands to control the wind shadow puppet. Magnetic escape. Sand iron attack chakra is input into the wind shadow puppet through the chakra line, and then transformed into chakra containing magnetic force, and then controls the remaining sand iron, turning into sharp iron spears, shooting straight at the white figure in the sand iron jungle. As for Scorpion himself, he stood quietly in place, stretched out his arms straight, and saw the cover of the mechanism in his palm opened, and two black gun barrels protruded from it. Water style. Sharp corrosion flow with the help of a scroll on his back that sealed the water style. Scorpion can quickly use powerful water style ninjutsu. Two water jets shot out from the barrel in his palm like lasers, and once again aimed at the white figure in the black jungle. It was a water knife formed by high pressure water flow, which was also extremely corrosive and highly toxic. Wherever the rapids passed, the rocks were cut open in an instant, as fragile as tofu. Even the black sand iron jungle could not block it at all, and was directly cut into by the high pressure water knife. Fortunately, the sand iron was not a whole piece, but was connected by magnetic force, which is why it became what it is now. As long as the damage is not too serious, they can rely on magnetism to recover by themselves. Therefore, at the moment when the water knife cut through the sand iron jungle, they reassembled together, like an illusion, that did not exist at all. At the moment, when Qishuang blocked the water cone of the water mask clone, the black iron spear of the wind shadow puppet and the high pressure water knife of Scorpion also arrived in front of him one after another. Ignoring the iron spears, Qishuang stood firm, opened his left palm, and aimed at the water knife that was cutting from behind. Ice style. Ice sealing technique. The black iron spear pierced his body, making a clanging sound, but it could not break his body defense at all, and could only fall to the ground unwillingly. At the same time, a wisp of icy air shone from his left palm again. Before the sharp high-pressure water knife cut his palm, it immediately condensed into a crystal popsicle and stopped in midair the moment it touched the cold air. How is it possible? Kikuzu almost dropped his jaw when he saw it. According to his observation, the destructive power of Scorpion's water-style ninjutsu was even greater than the water cone used by his water mask clone. Even if you look at the entire ninja world, it is a terrifying water-style ninjutsu that can be called a forbidden technique. But even such a water escape technique was still frozen by the boy in white. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that there was such a person in the world. This is simply the nemesis of water escape technique. I really don't understand why in this village, that is best at water escape technique, there would be such a freak who can restrain water escape technique. It's really incredible. Fortunately, he has all 5 attributes. Even if water escape technique is restrained, he still has the 4 major escape techniques of wind, fire, earth, and thunder to use. He doesn't have to worry about the dilemma of water escape technique being restrained. Otherwise, he would have to consider retreating now. On the other side, Scorpion, who was casting the water knife, was also horrified when he saw this scene. Seeing the ice crystal spreading towards his body along the water knife, he hurriedly interrupted the technique, and only then did he narrowly escape the danger of being frozen before the mouth of the palm tube was frozen. Originally, he had a scroll with a powerful fire escape ninjutsu on his back, but the temperature of that fire escape was too high, which would melt his sand iron directly, causing the sand iron barrier to be completely destroyed. In this way, without the obstacle, the opponent could easily approach him, so he did not dare to use the fire escape ninjutsu scroll. But now it seems that, even if he chooses water escape, it will be useless. At the same time, after blocking the sharp water knife, Qishuang and the sand iron jungle quickly formed a set of hand seals to transform the chakra into water properties. Water escape water dragon bullet jutsu. A water column surged up from the ground behind him, and a dragon head condensed at the top of the water column. The water dragon opened its mouth, let out a silent roar, and then rushed directly to the red-haired boy at the other end of the sand iron jungle. Although the dense sand iron jungle slowed down its speed a lot, it could not completely stop its momentum. The water dragon let the uneven iron sand branches pass through its body, dragging its long tail, and in the blink of an eye, it rushed through the obstacles and arrived in front of Scorpion. Magnetic style, iron sand skywing Scorpion, who had just escaped the danger of freezing, retreated hastily and controlled the wind shadow puppet to block in front of him. Because most of the iron sand was used to build the Iron Sand Realm lore, it was too late to recycle it for the time being, and he was unwilling to recycle it. At this moment, the wind shadow puppet only had 2 wings made of iron sand that could be used. Under the control of Scorpion's chakra line, it closed its 2 black iron sand wings and blocked the water dragon out. Unfortunately, strength is the puppet's fatal flaw. Although Scorpion can use the magnetic style of the wind shadow puppet to burst out with terrifying power, the puppet itself is very weak. If he can use all the iron sand to build the wing's defense, he can easily block the impact of this water dragon. Unfortunately, the iron sand wings of the wind shadow puppet could only barely protect itself at this time. It was impossible to create a large-scale defense barrier, nor could it stabilize its position with the weight of the iron sand. In just a moment, it was knocked out by the water dragon that was more than 10 meters long. Fortunately, with the cushion of the wind shadow puppet, Scorpion avoided the impact of the water dragon. He was not afraid of the attack of the mere water dragon bomb, but he had seen the opponent's continuous water escape and ice escape. He learned his lesson and never dared to touch Qishuang's water escape ninjutsu again. Sure enough, at the moment when the water dragon knocked the wind shadow puppet, the water dragon's body quickly solidified, and in the blink of an eye, the wind shadow puppet and the pair of iron sand wings were firmly frozen in it. The latter two were like a collapsed icicle and fell to the ground with a bang. At this time, the chasing Kikuzu followed the path that Qishuang had passed and easily rushed into the iron sand jungle and saw that there was only less than 5 meters left to the target. "Boy, where can you run to?" Kikuzu's voice was filled with contempt and pride. After that, he used the earth spear to bless his arms again, and then, under the traction of the gray-black tentacles, he ejected his arms and shot them straight at the white figure. Looking at the arms that shot like cannonballs, Qishuang put one hand on the side, strung it on the ice cone of the Sandan jungle, and waved at Kakuzu, saying, "Sorry, you are late again." Chapter 438 Dying. Before he finished speaking, Kakuzu's arm shot through the figure and hit a cluster of Sandan branches behind him, but he didn't catch anything. Qishuang disappeared right before his eyes. At the same time, a familiar white figure jumped out from the head of the ice dragon at the other end of the Sandan jungle and attacked the red-haired boy next to him. Scorpion is in trouble. Seeing this scene, Kakuzu couldn't help but frown secretly. There is no doubt that the opponent used the ice escape instant body method to teleport to the ice dragon on the other side through the ice cone. Once again, the distance between them was widened. Unfortunately, the surrounding area was covered by Scorpion's Sandan jungle. Even if he could force a path, it would not take a while. Helplessly, he could only command the other 4 mask clones to prepare to provide long-range firepower assistance to Scorpion from the outside of the Sandan jungle. At the same time, the people outside the battlefield who saw the sudden change in the situation were also shocked. Black Zetsu, who was hiding in a corner watching the battle, murmured, "Scorpion's mechanical puppet was restrained by ice release. The result may be very bad. It's time for Fei to take action." Fei had been forbearing, just hoping to use Kakuzu and Scorpion's hands to create a fighter. Now that the fighter has not been seen, but Scorpion is in a fatal crisis, he believes that Fei will definitely not sit still. Just as Black Zetsu guessed, after seeing this scene, Fei immediately activated the right Mangeki Sharingan and sucked himself into the Sharingan's different space. He wanted to use the space movement ability to support Scorpion. Seeing the sudden appearance of a white figure next to the ice dragon, Scorpion was shocked and angry. What was surprising was that he did not expect the other party to instantly cross the Sandan jungle and come to his side in this way. Originally, in order to prevent staying on the ice and being attacked by the other party, he deliberately landed outside the ice release area. Who knew that the other party was so ingenious that he used the body of the ice dragon as a foothold and once again used the ice release instant body technique. Until then, he finally understood that the opponent's water dragon bomb just now not only had the purpose of surprise attacking him, but also intended to create a foothold for himself. Because, in that dense Sandan jungle, it is impossible to create an ice dragon directly. Only the impermanent water force can break through the obstacles and come to his side. However, in addition to being surprised, Scorpion was more angry. Because the opponent ignored Kakuzu behind him, but tried every means to rush to him, and it was clear that he was going to kill him first, and then deal with Kakuzu. In other words, he was seen as a soft persimmon. A soft persimmon that was not as good as Kakuzu. Although he had never fought with Kakuzu, Scorpion believed that he would never lose to Kakuzu, and they were strong men of the same level. But Qishuang's attitude undoubtedly deeply hurt his self-esteem. So, Scorpion was very angry at this time. Angry, but he didn't lose his mind. At present, this barrier used to block the opponent from getting close has lost its proper function. Not only can it not block the enemy, but it also traps him, the caster, in it, putting himself in danger. Unfortunately, this Sandan boundary method was set up by him with the power of the wind shadow puppet. He himself does not have the ability to directly remove it, and must rely on the power of the wind shadow puppet to remove the spell. However, the wind shadow puppet is now frozen in the mouth of the ice dragon and cannot move. Even the chakra line cannot reach it, let alone help him to remove the confinement of the Sandan jungle. Helplessly, he had to harden his heart and prepare to deal with the difficult enemy at close range. Then, he stretched out his arms, and the cover of the mechanism in his palm opened, and 2 tube-shaped mechanisms once again protruded. "You look down on me too much," Scorpion roared angrily, pointing the tube mouth at the white figure rushing towards him. As soon as the voice fell, another scroll on his back dissipated. Fire style, flame prisoner ray, then 2 red flames spurted out from the nozzles in his palms and shot straight at Qishuang. Wherever the flames passed, the Sandan branches melted and turned into red molten iron flowing on the ground. Even the surrounding fog was steamed up to the sky because of the huge heat emitted by the flames, and the environment within a radius of dozens of meters suddenly became much clearer. Because the distance between the two sides was too close, only about 5 meters, and the surrounding sand-iron jungle blocked it, Qishuang had no way to avoid it, and was immediately sprayed by the blazing flames. Fortunately, he had ice-style chakra mode to protect himself, otherwise he would have been burned to ashes in an instant by the blazing flames. Even so, being sprayed by the terrifying flames head-on, Qishuang still felt uncomfortable. The terrible high temperature caused the chakra coat on his body to quickly dissolve, and the chakra consumption rate immediately increased by several levels. You know, even when he was resisting Ming's molten slime, his chakra consumption rate was not as fast as this time, when he was sprayed by Scorpion's flame. Obviously, the destructive power of Scorpion's flame technique far exceeded that of ordinary fire ninjutsu. It was at the same level as the water knife that easily cut through the sand-iron forest just now, comparable to a forbidden technique. Despite this, he quickly gathered his chakra in his hands, resisted Scorpion's flame attack, and went forward. Because if he missed this time, it would be even more difficult to deal with Scorpion again. Especially Arfei, who was hiding in the dark, would never wait for the opportunity to fight after seeing that he had the possibility of killing Scorpion. If he let that troublesome guy join the battle again, his situation would become worse. The distance of about 5 meters was reached in the blink of an eye. Because of the obstruction of the sand-iron forest, Scorpion himself had no room to dodge. In his angry and anxious eyes, Qishuang raised his left hand and slapped him directly on the chest. Ice escape, ice sealing technique. Because of the high temperature of the flame, the cold air will evaporate the moment it is released into the air. Therefore, Qishuang cannot freeze Scorpion's body through the air in this situation. He can only use direct contact to make the technique fully effective. Jiaodu, who was far away at the other end of the sand-iron jungle, was helpless. He wanted to help, but Scorpion was trapped in his own trap, using the sand-iron jungle to trap everyone inside, and he couldn't get through at all. As for the 4 masked clones outside, they still couldn't catch up, because the battle situation changed too quickly. The opponent's sudden ice escape instant body became the key to turning the tide of the battle, leaving him no chance to reinforce. Disperse. Seeing the ice crystals begin to spread on his chest, Scorpion immediately stopped the flame spray, gritted his teeth, and dispersed his puppet body, hoping to avoid the danger of being frozen. At this time, a void vortex suddenly opened above the two people's heads, and a one-eyed mask rushed out and snatched Scorpion's head from the scattered puppet parts. Qishuang had no intention of competing with him, because he knew Scorpion's weakness better than anyone else. Therefore, he grabbed the regeneration core with the word Scorpion tattooed on it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439, Surprise. Crash. The parts of Scorpion's puppet body were scattered on the ground, like building blocks that were scattered by naughty children, and spread all over the ground in a mess. Although he was very confused as to why the other party did not fight with him for the important head parts, Arfei still grabbed Scorpion's head and retreated quickly, not giving the other party a chance to destroy the parts of Scorpion's head. Qishuang grabbed the cylindrical regeneration core with the red word Scorpion tattooed on it, and many red short whiskers on the column, and retreated to the other side very tacitly. Then, he mobilized chakra to gather on his 5 fingers, and immediately saw a sharp ice nail growing on the tip of his finger holding the regeneration core. It was a special nail with water in the inner layer and ice on the outer layer. Not wanting to give Arfei a chance, he did not hesitate at all, and clenched his 5 fingers fiercely. The sharp ice nails immediately inserted into the regeneration core, and were stained with a layer of deep red. Arfei on the opposite side saw this scene, and felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. Ice escape, cold finger ice kill. Then, Qishuang solidified the water in the ice nails, causing them to expand and change. Immediately, clusters of sharp ice spikes broke out from the Scorpion's regeneration core. In an instant, blood splattered, dyeing his entire arm red. This is also another way to use heavy rain ice kill, but the form is slightly different. The basic principle is still the mixture of ice and water, and the expansion of ice. At the same time, Arfei on the opposite side suddenly understood something, and he hurriedly patted the scorpion's head. "Scorpion, are you okay?" He frowned and called out. Unfortunately, the owner of the head had already closed his eyes and did not respond to his call. "Don't shout." Qishuang threw the regeneration core that was pierced like a hornet's nest by the ice spikes over, wiping the blood on his hands, and said to himself, "This is the real core of the scorpion. People's thinking depends entirely on the brain, so after seeing the puppet of the scorpion, most people will instinctively think that the head parts are the core of its consciousness." However, in order to be on the safe side, Scorpion chose to keep the heart instead of the brain when making the regeneration core. Therefore, his consciousness also moved from the brain to the heart. Because the regeneration core is related to his life and death, Scorpion has never told anyone about it, and those who have fought with him and know this are probably dead. Although a woman who uses origami has fought with him and subdued him and brought him into the organization, Scorpion should not have fought desperately at that time, so the only person in their organization who has fought with Scorpion does not know this secret. And Qishuang, with the memory of her previous life, knew Scorpion's details very well, and of course knew where Scorpion's vital point was. Unfortunately, Arfei didn't know this secret, so he robbed the wrong thing. Otherwise, Scorpion would have escaped this time. Seeing the blood-stained cylindrical parts with the red word Scorpion rolling on the ground, Arfei focused the power of his Sharingan and immediately saw the chakras dissipating rapidly inside. With the ability of the Sharingan to see chakra, he easily identified that one of the ice chakras belonged to Nanashiro, and the other chakra belonged to his partner, Scorpion. Then, he hurriedly turned around and focused his pupil power on the head parts in his hand, only to find that there was no chakra in the head. There is no doubt that the parts containing chakra on the ground are the real core of Scorpion. He robbed the wrong thing. Scorpion of the red sand is dead. You. Before he could finish his words, a teasing voice came from the other side. "You are surprised why I know this secret, right?" Nanashiro looked at him deeply and said, "I know more than you think, Uchiha Obito." As soon as these words came out, both Arfei who was present and Zetsu who was watching the battle outside were all shocked. "Where did that kid find out Arfei's identity?" White Zetsu said in surprise. "Obito faked his death and escaped, using the alias of Arfei. No one in the entire organization knew this secret, except him and Black Zetsu. Moreover, after Obito faked his death, he never showed his true face in front of anyone. No matter what, he couldn't figure out what went wrong." Black Zetsu didn't respond to the white half-body's words, but just murmured, "I have a bad feeling. Since that guy knows Obito, it means that he is likely to know everything Obito has experienced and the plan that person has arranged. No wonder he knows Obito's ability so well." Until then, Black Zetsu finally understood why the other party deliberately hid Nohararin's body. It turned out that it was a long-planned plan. Nohararin was left behind just to target Uchiha Obito. "According to you, Obito will still lose this battle?" White Zetsu asked in surprise. Black Zetsu whispered, "That guy named Nana Frost came prepared. Obito is likely to lose, but there is still hope." As he said that, he looked back to the east, where three figures were galloping. Fortunately, they made multiple preparations in advance, otherwise there would be no hope of winning this battle. Thinking of this, he secretly thought, just in case, I should also keep a backup plan. On the other side, when they heard Qishuang calling the one-eyed mask by name, the father and son of Jideng Masamune knew the real name of their long-term ally. As expected, the other party was indeed from the Uchiha family. However, no matter what, they did not expect that after the Uchiha clan was exterminated, in addition to the Uchiha Itachi brothers, there was actually such an extra Uchiha clan member in the world. Also because the Uchiha clan was ranked among the wealthy families of Konoha. At this moment, Jideng Masamune could not help but wonder whether this man from the Uchiha clan came here deliberately to subvert the Kirigakure. However, when this idea just arose, he was quickly extinguished in his heart. Because the Uchiha clan had already fallen into this situation, he could not think of what was the point of the other party doing these things for Konoha. Although, on the surface, the Uchiha clan extermination seems to be the personal work of Uchiha Itachi, but in the eyes of these old politicians, this matter is definitely not that simple, and it is definitely related to the top leaders of Konoha. You know, the Uchiha and Konoha are at odds, which has been a well-known secret since the reign of the second generation Hokage. In addition, before the Uchiha clan extermination, there was the Ninetales Rebellion, and Konoha even had rumors that it was the work of Uchiha. Under such circumstances, no one can believe that the Uchiha clan extermination would be so simple. The most important thing is that after the Uchiha was removed from Konoha, the other party was left alone. Instead of coming to their Kirigakure to stir up trouble, it would be better to hunt down the culprit of the clan extermination, Uchiha Itachi. However, Kizuna Masamune did not know that Uchiha Obito came to Kirigakure with the intention of subverting Kirigakure, but he did not do it for Konoha, but to pave the way for revenge and implementation of future plans. Chapter 440 Ryuichi. Kakuzu, who had passed through the Iron Sand jungle with difficulty, joined a ferry with 4 clones. He looked at the one-eyed mask with interest and said, "So, Uchiha Obito is your real name?" As a veteran in the organization, he had dealt with the ferry many times. Therefore, he knew very well that a ferry was another hidden leader in the organization. What's more interesting is that a ferry introduced himself in front of this group of old people, and his name was Uchiha Madara. He was the only man who could fight against the god of ninja at the beginning of Konoha. A ferry became another leader in the organization by using the name of Uchiha Madara. However, Kakuzu, who had fought with Senju Hashirama, knew very well the meaning of the name Uchiha Madara. The ninja Senju Hashirama, who was like the reincarnation of the Six Paths sage, was really terrifying to the extreme, far beyond his imagination. If the other party had not shown mercy, he would not have survived until now. Even after he mastered the secret technique of Earth Grudge and gained even more powerful strength, Kakuzu still saw no hope of defeating his opponent. However, even such a powerful ninja encountered an opponent like Uchiha Madara in the Warring States period. Although Hashirama Senju defeated Uchiha Madara in the Valley of the End, no one dared to question Uchiha Madara's strength. He was a man who could rival the god of ninja. However, in the man who claimed to be Uchiha Madara in front of him, he could not feel the strength and momentum that could rival Hashirama Senju. Although Afeni has always claimed that he was seriously injured in the battle with Hashirama Senju and his strength could not be restored, Kakuzu's heart was like a mirror, and the other party was not injured at all. This man is definitely not Uchiha Madara. It's just that there is no evidence, and it is of no benefit to him to point out this fact, so Kakuzu has never brought it up. Now, this man who claims to be Uchiha Madara has been exposed by an outsider and called by his real name, which really surprised him. As for the authenticity of the name, he had no doubts, because Afeni's attitude had already explained everything. "Where did you know this name?" Throwing away the head parts of the scorpion in his hand, Uchiha Obito narrowed his one eye. His heart was like boiling water, and he could no longer calm down. This name has been thrown away by him for many years. Unexpectedly, it would be called out by a mist ninja today. Nana Qishuang stretched out her bloody fingers and shook them, with a smug smile, saying, "It doesn't matter where I know it from. What's important is that you need to understand that your beloved Nohara is in my hands. Whether it's her soul or her body, it's all in my hands." Hearing this, Obito's pupils couldn't help but shrink slightly. If he said that the other party had Rin's remains, he could still understand, but the language of having a soul made him a little confused. At the same time, seeing that the two had no intention of taking action for the time being, Kakuzu was also happy to be idle and temporarily stop the fight. But when he saw the puppet parts scattered on the ground, he felt a little complicated. "I thought that Scorpion's puppet body could be reassembled infinitely and not afraid of death, but who knew that it actually left a fatal flaw? What's more terrible is that this flaw was known to others. As a result, he died here inexplicably, which is really sad." Thinking of this, he couldn't help but wonder if that guy named Qishuang also knew the secret of his 5 lives. You know, there are quite a few people who know that he has 5 hearts and 5 lives after practicing Earth Grudge. That guy even knew such a secret flaw of Scorpion, so he should also know his Earth Grudge. Fortunately, his Earth Grudge secret technique does not have as fatal a flaw as Scorpion. If you want to kill him, you must kill him 5 times in a row. Therefore, he is not very worried about his safety. Just when Obito was about to ask again, a huge pitcher plant-like plant grew on the ground next to him. He's here, Obito. White Zetsu said to the one-eyed mask with a strange smile, and looked at Qishuang not far away with a playful look. Hearing this, Obito's restless heart calmed down again. He narrowed his eyes and said to Nanoshuang, I have prepared 3 great gifts for you, and the first one is here. After that, he raised his arm and pointed to the east. Nanoshuang carefully took 2 steps back, and while on guard, he looked over as the other party instructed, but saw 3 figures rushing over from the east at a very fast speed. As the distance got closer and closer, he realized that they were Zabuza, Meditarumi, and Haku. However, Zabuza's sword was on Medi's neck. Seeing this scene, his heart couldn't help but fall to the bottom. The joy of killing the red sand scorpion disappeared at this moment. There is no doubt that Zabuza has betrayed. However, he couldn't figure out why Zabuza did this. How about it? Is this great gift I gave you enough? After finally getting back a city, Obito's tone couldn't help but become a little more proud. Nanashi didn't answer, but clenched her fists secretly, exerted enough strength on her feet, and bounced out in an instant. Under the mask, Obito couldn't help but curl up his lips, and was in a good mood. However, he didn't intend to let Nanashi save people. Go. With a command, he immediately sucked himself into the different space of his right eye, and disappeared quietly on the spot. Kakuzu next to him used the earth spear to bless his arms, disconnected his hands from the elbows, and once again bounced towards Nanashi's back. The 4 masked clones around him were not idle either, and they all chased after him. Sensing the attack from behind, Nanashi immediately turned sideways, and immediately 2 black arms brushed past his body like a cannonball, and hit the ground with a bang, shaking out a large pit of more than 2 meters. At the same time, a void vortex opened not far in front of him, and accompanied by a faint voice, Obito walked out from it. Do you think I will give you a chance to save people? Damn it. Nana Frost gritted her teeth, and was extremely irritated. In terms of mobility, Obito's eye is only a little slower than the Flying Thunder God technique, or even comparable. It is much stronger than his ice release instant body. If the opponent deliberately pesters him, he has no way to get rid of it. At this moment, Kakuzu's 4 clones also caught up and blocked his way. Lightning release, pseudo darkness wind release, suppression water release, water fang bullet fire release, head hardship. The 4 masked clones attacked together, using 4 brilliant ninjutsu of lightning, wind whirl, fire bullet, and water cone, covering an area of more than 100 meters in radius, forcing Nana Frost to have no way to advance or retreat, and was directly submerged in the storm of ninjutsu. Kakuzu was not as weak as everyone imagined. With only the wind and fire escape techniques, he could burn Naruto to dust and dirt, and there was no chance for him to get close. But after Naruto came, he no longer used ninjutsu. The plot was too serious. Also, the Earth attribute heart was broken in advance, so the Earth Spear could not be used, otherwise the Rasengan Shuriken could barely break the defense. Chapter 441 Betrayal, Part 1. Leisurely watching Qishuang being forced back, Obito didn't take any action, and just stood there quietly. In the distance, Zabuza and Terumi Medi quickly passed through the circle of guards, and landed next to him in a few ups and downs. Is he the one you want me to see, Zabuza? Terumi Medi said without looking back, staring at the one-eyed mask in front of her. The blade of the decapitating knife was close to her neck. It seemed that, if she made the slightest move, the knife would cut off her head first. Now, there is even a faint red mark left on the fair skin. That was the mark left by being accidentally cut by a knife blade while rushing on the road. Well, that's him. Zabuza didn't explain too much, just nodded subconsciously. Can you tell me why? Terumi Medi didn't dare to turn her head, for fear of being cut by the blade. She tried her best to turn her eyes, trying to see what the expression of the man behind her was. Unfortunately, no matter how she adjusted her vision, she just couldn't take into account the owner of the broadsword on her neck. Zabuza chose silence, and did not answer. Helpless, Terumi Medi could only ask his little follower, you must know the reason for this, Zio baby? The handsome boy shook his head and whispered, "Sorry, Terumi Medi-sama, I can't say." Hearing the beauty in the blue dress asking questions repeatedly, but avoiding him alone, Obito said playfully, "Why don't you ask me? Since he brought you to see me, I naturally know everything about it." "Oh." Terumi Medi glared at him and sneered, "You will tell me? As a prisoner, she is very self-aware." The other party looked down at her like a winner and spoke rashly. "It's just a shame. Only Zabuza and Haku next to them might care about their old relationship and explain all this clearly. Therefore, she only asked the two of them and had no hope at all for the enemy in front of her. Of course I will tell you, because explaining the reasons will make me feel happy." Obito looked at her deeply and then said hello to Kakuzu not far away. "Take a rest, we are ready to change people." After hearing this, he and his clone used ninjutsu to attack Qishuang until he was disgraced. He stopped the attack in surprise and then took his clone to the side. He didn't understand at all what Obito, a Fei, was planning. After getting a chance to breathe, Qishuang did not dare to continue to pester, but looked at Kakuzu with a little more fear. Kakuzu's ninjutsu offensive is too fierce. Although the 4 major ninjutsu attacks are far behind Scorpion's 2 ninjutsu scrolls, any escape technique is still at the top level in the ninja world. If someone could obtain one of these, they could easily become one of the elite jounin. But that guy in Kakuzu has mastered 4 kinds of secret techniques at the same time, plus a super powerful earth escape defense technique. It's really terrifyingly strong. Qishuang estimated that, if he didn't use the power of celestial beings, there would be no way he could kill Kakuzu. Outside the field, Kitamasamune, who was watching the battle, was pleasantly surprised after seeing Zabuza and the other 3 appearing. He didn't recognize the other 2, but he recognized the beautiful woman in the blue dress at a glance. That is the current person in charge of the Terumi family, Terumi Medi. At this time, Terumi Medi was kidnapped and brought here. It was a God-sent opportunity. If he can control it and use it, he will definitely deal a heavy blow to the US forces. Immediately, he hurriedly ordered his son next to him, "Manu, hurry over and take a look, and bring that little girl back to me." "But, father, your safety." Gui Deng Manu hesitated. Although he knew Terumi Medi's significance to the Oniden family, he was more worried about his father's safety. This was the purpose of his stay at Gui Deng's house. Therefore, he will not leave his father's side easily. Oniden Masamune looked at the beauty in the blue dress on the battlefield and said excitedly, "Leave me alone. Go, go. Bring her back to me." The man who claimed to be a Fei, no, is Uchiha Obito now. Uchiha Obito has ulterior motives and cannot completely believe that such an important goal as Medi Terumi must be in his own hands before he can rest assured. Seeing that her father was determined, Manu had no choice but to tell the 2 guards next to her, "While I'm away, you must stay alert." "Yes." The 2 guards agreed in unison. A sound. Immediately, Ghost Lantern jumped out in an instant, fell into the battlefield after a few ups and downs, and slowly walked towards Uchiha Obito and others. "You must be curious as to why your most trusted partner would do such a thing, right?" Uchiha Obito shouted proudly to Qishuang not far away. Qishuang did not answer, but stared closely at the one-eyed mask, with murder and hatred written on her face. If looks could kill, the other party would have been killed by him countless times. It's a pity that Obito didn't care at all about this, or in other words, the deeper Qishuang's hatred, the happier he felt. The so-called revenge is for self-satisfaction. He said to himself, "I have checked the information of all the members of your team, and I know that Zabuza Momochi has a record of fighting with you. I even know that Zabuza Momochi has fought with you since he was a boy. He has always wanted to defeat you and has been obsessed with it. It's just that, since you came back from practice, you have made great progress and are unwilling to fight with you again. He has become a demon and wants to fight you more and more. A battle. So, I told him that, as long as he brings Terumi Medi here, he can force you to take action without any avoidance, so that he can realize his wish. As for the aftermath, I also promised him, when the time comes, you can leave Kirigakure with us, join our organization, and get shelter." After that, he turned back and glanced at the bandage-faced man holding a big knife. Hearing this, Qishuang looked at Zabuza angrily and asked loudly, "Is what he said true, Zabuza?" In any case, He did not want to believe that Zabuza would fight for a moment to win or lose, bringing his former companion Ming into danger. He hoped to hear another answer from Zabuza's mouth. However, he was disappointed. Zabuza replied coldly, "Well, that's it." At the same time, Meditarumi, who was held by the beheading sword, felt her heart sink to the bottom of the sea. Zabuza is so disappointing. Like Qishuang, she also didn't want to believe that Zabuza would do such a boring thing for such a boring reason. Therefore, even though she was held hostage by Zabuza before, she was only confused, but had no complaints. But now, Zabuza's answer had to make her recognize this cold reality. This former companion has become unrecognizable to her. I know that, as soon as this chapter comes out, many people will scold me. However, I hope that everyone will make a decision after reading the next chapter. Chapter 442 Betrayal, Part 2. Oh, right. As if remembering something, Achihirobito continued to say to Nana Qishuang, "I heard that his sword was broken, so I deliberately went to the Kirigakure armory and brought out this beheading sword. Take it as a gift to celebrate our friendship. Do you think my gift is good enough?" After saying that, he flicked his finger at the beheading sword next to him, and suddenly a clear sound came out. Ding! Hearing this, Nana Qishuang was angry and furious. It was not until then that he understood that the beheading sword in Zabuza's hand came from this. Mainjutsu Kizuki, who had reunited with Obito and his group, looked at the sword without caring, but took a deep look at the owner of the sword. Compared with the sword, the person who used the sword could arouse his interest more. The characteristic of the broken sword beheading sword is to absorb the iron element in the human blood and then repair itself. In general, there is nothing attractive about it. Therefore, even though he knew that the beheading sword had been recovered by Kirigakure after Biwajuzo's death, he did not deliberately collect it. In addition, he was busy with other things and forgot about the sword. Unexpectedly, it fell into the hands of the demon today. This made him curious and excited, because he had heard that the demon Zabuza was a rare swordsman. Now that the other party has mastered the beheading sword, he is very curious about the level of this legendary swordsmanship master. You know, as a ninja who specializes in swordsmanship, he is eager to fight with someone like Zabuza. At the same time, seeing him coming, Achihirobito was surprised and said, "Why don't you protect your clan leader and come here?" Hearing this, Mantsuki Hazuki said seriously, "The clan leader said that Meditarumi is of great significance and ordered me to take her away because she may be related to the outcome of our battle. Ahem." After saying that, he stretched out his hand and was about to take the beautiful woman in the blue skirt away. However, a girl holding 1,000 books in her hand blocked him. "Get out of the way, little girl." Mantsuki squinted and shouted at her, "I'm sorry, Mr. Zabuza didn't agree to give the person to you," Bei said seriously. Hearing his masculine voice, Mantsuki Hazuki was stunned for a moment. After a long while, he came back to his senses. It turned out that the person was a boy. Fortunately, he thought this little girl was very beautiful before. Obito next to him was also embarrassed when he saw it. Fortunately, he was wearing a mask on his face, so no one noticed anything unusual. On the other side, because Kakuzu was eyeing him covetously, and because the enemy was outnumbered, and Ming was held hostage by Zabuza, Qishuang did not dare to act rashly. He had to take advantage of the distraction of the others to quietly accumulate chakra. He needed a lot of chakra to use a spell to prepare for the battle later. Quickly sorting out his depressed mood, Mainjutsu Hazuki glanced at Zabuza and the boy, then looked at the one-eyed mask, raised his eyebrows and said, "Achihirobito, what are you going to do about this? Give it to him or not?" Ahem. He had already made the worst plan. If the other party did not give it, he would wait a while, wait until the war started again, and find the right time to kidnap the person. Under the mask, Obito's face had a playful smile, and he said, "I have other uses for this woman, so I can't give it to you for the time being." His purpose was to make the three families fight to the death, and try to consume the fundamental power of Kirigakure, not to help Hazuki dominate Kirigakure. If Meditarumi is given to the Hazuki family, it may affect the balance of the war, which is not the result he wants. More importantly, he has to keep Meditarumi in exchange for the remains of Nohara in Nana Qishuang's hands. In any case, this woman must not be given to the Hazuki clan. Okay, I understand. Ahem. Without getting the answer he wanted, Hazuki Manayu retreated to the side with a cough and waited for the opportunity. As for Nana Shuang not far away, he had no intention of fighting with her for the time being. Because Uchiha Obito seemed to want to take her down more than he did. With so much free labor, he didn't need to do it himself. Seeing Manayu hiding aside, Uchiha Obito couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Although the other party didn't say anything, his heart was clear. Hazuki Manayu was waiting for them to besiege Nana Shuang and then snatched people in the chaos. Unfortunately, the other party's plan was doomed to fail because the space in his right eye could accommodate a person, which was a natural cage, and he was not afraid that Meditarumi would be kidnapped. Thinking of this, he gathered chakra to his right eye and said to Zabuza, "Go ahead, I think at this moment, he is willing to skin you alive, and he will definitely give you a satisfying fight." Then, he called to Kakuzu who was not far away. "The next battle will be handed over to our new friend. Let's see what kind of battle feast the new wielder of the beheading sword will bring us." After that, he looked at the bandaged man with a playful look and put his right hand on the shoulder of Meditarumi. Then, a vortex of emptiness slowly opened with the one eye hole on his mask as a center. "Okay, I'll leave the man to you. I'll go meet him now." Zabuza nodded and slowly moved the blade away from Meditarumi's neck. At the moment, when the blade completely left the white neck, Zabuza suddenly attacked, rushed forward with a step, and raised the blade upside down, directly from Obito's crotch to the top of his head. At the same time, Haku, who was standing next to him, also shot the senbon in his hand at Obito's neck in tacit understanding. Seeing this scene, whether it was Maingetsu and Kakuzu who were watching the show happily, or Nanashiro who was furious on the other side of the battlefield, they were all shocked. Zabuza has betrayed again. Meditarumi, who was closest to him, was surprised and happy to notice the change. Without time to ask the reason, she immediately formed a seal and spit a mouthful of milky white mucus at the one-eyed mask next to her. Although she was a beat late, her dissolving mucus still successfully hit the opponent's figure. Unfortunately, she was too happy too early. Whether it was Zabuza's blade, Haku's senbon, or her mucus, none of them hit the entity and flew straight through Obito's figure without causing any substantial damage. At the same time, under the mask, Obito's voice full of mockery came. "Do you think I really have no defense against you, Zabuza?" Although Zabuza had kidnapped Meditarumi for him, he never believed in Zabuza. Because, from the beginning, he had no intention of bringing Zabuza into the organization, but to let him perform a good show of killing his companions, and then kill him in front of Nanashin. Especially when he learned from White Zetsu that Nanashin knew that he needed to reveal the flaw of the entity when absorbing objects, he paid more attention to this flaw. The action that seemed to be preparing to absorb Meditarumi just now was actually just an illusion he created in order to test the other party. He didn't want to reveal a fatal flaw in front of such an extremely fast swordsman. After all, he had the experience of having his arm broken, and he didn't want to make the same mistake again. Chapter 443 Summoning. Retreat. Zabuza called out to the two, and then retreated in a hurry. He thought that he could cut them in half, while the other party absorbed Meditarumi and revealed her physical form. But he never expected that the other party had already taken precautions and his plan failed. "You want to leave? It's not that easy." Looking at the three people retreating in a hurry, Obito snorted coldly and said, "Since you don't want to follow the path I arranged for you, then I'll send you on your way in advance." After that, he pinched seals with both hands, gathered chakra in his mouth and right eye, and took a deep breath. Fire style, explosive wind dancer red fire snake spewed out of his mouth, and after being twisted by the vortex of the void in his right eye, it turned into a fire tornado and rolled towards Zabuza and the other two who were retreating in a hurry. The fire tornado was fierce and covered a wide area. The three people had no way to avoid it, and even Maingetsu Kizuki, who was not far away, was affected. They had to retreat a long way and completely avoided the scorching flames. "Back off, you can't stop it." Seeing Zyuobe preparing to cast a spell to resist, Terumi Mei formed a seal, while blocking the two of them, and sprayed a turbulent torrent towards the oncoming fire tornado. Water style. Water formation pillar. The torrent expanded rapidly, like a reservoir releasing a flood, and immediately blocked the overwhelming fire tornado, and there was a faint tendency to suppress it. No matter how hard Obito tried, he still couldn't make the fire tornado go any further, and there was even a tendency to be forced back by the torrent. How could this happen? He was shocked. With the power of the right eye to distort the void, his fire style was further sublimated, far exceeding ordinary fire style ninjutsu. But even so, his fire style was still blocked, and even suppressed in turn. This was certainly because water restrains fire and the attributes were unfavorable, but more importantly, the opponent's water style was stronger than his fire style. He could understand that he was blocked by the three-tailed beast, the tailed beast that was best at water style among the nine-tailed beasts. But now, he was blocked by Meitarumi again, and he really couldn't accept this fact. Because she had fallen into his hands twice in a row, he had subconsciously regarded her as a beautiful vase. Now, this woman who he disdained and looked like a vase actually burst out with such power, which really surprised him. It seems that I underestimated that woman. Helplessly, he had to interrupt the output of chakra and cancel the ritual. If he continued to fight, the result would still not change, but it would be a waste of chakra. With the cover of the mist, he used his ability to become a virtual being and rushed straight towards the rushing torrent. Taking advantage of Zabuza's betrayal to attract everyone's attention, Nanoshin was not idle either. He immediately bit his right thumb, quickly drew a bloody mark on the palm of his left hand, and then slapped it on the ground. Summoning technique as chakra infused the void, black rune marks turned into unique array patterns, spreading from his palm to the surroundings, and in just a blink of an eye, he covered the 2-meter radius of his foothold. Then, a white smoke screen rose up, and a slender figure loomed in the smoke screen. Such a strong smell of blood, such a strong smell of corpses. How many people died here? With a sigh, the smoke screen dispersed, revealing a white-clothed shrine maiden with green hair. But she frowned, her face was serious, and she was not very happy. The corners not far away noticed Qishuang's little move, but it was too late to stop it. I thought the other party would summon some terrifying summon beast to help in the battle, but who knew that the result was such a weak and pretty shrine maiden, which really surprised him. However, to be on the safe side, he did not attack rashly. His long life allowed him to accumulate a variety of rich experiences. Although the white-robed shrine maiden looked very weak, the shinobi world is full of strange things, and there are often many deadly dangers, but they look very ordinary on the surface. Many people ignore such existence, which is why they are overturned by others. He doesn't want to be the unlucky guy who capsizes in the gutter. Welcome to the Hidden Mist Village, Lady shines in Shenji. On the other side, Qishuang greeted the white-robed shrine maiden, while guarding against Kakuzu not far away. The Hidden Mist Village? Hearing this, Shiams in Shenji looked around suspiciously, and found that all the high buildings had collapsed, and only 1 in 10 low houses remained. There were even deafening shouts of killing in the distance. From the sound, it was at least a large-scale war with nearly 10,000 people. There is no doubt that Qishuang summoned her to the battlefield. However, the other party told her that this was the Hidden Mist Village. I remember that, although your Hidden Mist Village was very chaotic, it was not as chaotic as this, right? She frowned and said, confused. The communication snake tribe responsible for recording the changes in the Kirigakure village has not yet transmitted the information back to the Ryochi cave, so they don't know what the Kirigakure village is like. A civil war broke out in our village, so it became like this. After a quick explanation, Qishuang immediately rushed out to support Terumi Medi and the other two. Shiams in Shenji hurriedly used the floating technique to catch up and asked curiously, since you are fighting, why did you summon me to come over? You won't forget that I once said that I will not easily get involved in the struggle between you humans, right? After saying that, she had a playful smile on her face. I didn't forget. Qishuang said as she ran quickly, I summoned you to come here because I have another important matter to ask for help. Oh. Shiams in Shenji asked suspiciously, then tell me. As long as she is not directly involved in the battle, she still doesn't mind helping. Nanashi lowered his voice and said, wait a minute. At the same time, seeing Nanashi start to move, Kakuzu immediately guessed his intention. to support Zabuza and the other two, and immediately surrounded him with his four masked clones. The clone who was best at ninjutsu attack took the lead, and the wind helped the fire, immediately turning the area of more than 100 meters into a sea of fire. But this alone was not enough to pose any threat to Nanashi. The larger the scale of the ninjutsu, the more dispersed its power. His ice release chakra mode could completely ignore attacks of this level. However, Xianxin Shenji who was following him was implicated by him. Although such an attack could not hurt her at all, she had no intention of participating in the battle, and she did not want to be used as a living target for ninjutsu. With a flick of his sleeve, he immediately extinguished all the fire waves within a radius of 5 meters. After understanding Nanashi's purpose of summoning her, she quickly used the flotation technique to rise into the sky and completely escape from the sea of fire. Damn it. Kakuzu was a little helpless when he saw it. The opponent's flying height was completely beyond his attack range. No matter how powerful his spell was, he could not touch the opponent's hair. Fortunately, the witch did not seem to have the intention of participating in the battle. She just floated quietly in the air, which made him feel relieved. What made him even more relieved was that the key target left in the sea of fire did not have the ability to fly. Otherwise, his life would be difficult. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival, Change. Chapter 444, Fire Realm, Part 1. At this time, Kakuzu had no idea that Ninashiro was not unable to fly, but felt that there was no need to expose this ability for the time being, so he did not use it rashly. The flying speed of the levitation technique was actually similar to his ground running speed, and even in terms of short distance movement, his ground speed would be faster. At this time, revealing this card had no practical significance except for letting Obito and his companions strengthen their vigilance in advance. Although the white Zetsu clone lurking in Terumi's house heard Ninashiro say that he could fly, he had not seen it with his own eyes. In addition, the flying ability was too rare, so he regarded this as a joke he made to Terumi, and did not tell Obito and his companions. Therefore, on the battlefield at this time, except for Ninashiro himself and the newly arrived Xianxin Shenji, no one knew that he had the ability to fly. Ignoring Kakuzu's sea of fire, Ninashiro still maintained a very fast speed to approach Zabuza and the other two, and in just a moment, he rushed out of the hell of fire created by the wind and fire mask clone. Don't even think about it. Seeing that he completely ignored him, Kakuzu was a little angry and shot out his arms again. The other two on-call C-Mine mask clones also chased after Nanashion the moment she showed up, each of them constantly using water cones and lightning strikes to greet them from behind. At the same time, after a fire escape failed, and seeing that Nanashion and the others were getting closer and closer and about to meet, Obito couldn't help but frown. This was not the ending he designed. Then, he opened a vortex of void in front of him and walked in. Just when Terumi and the others were still curious about why he stopped chasing, they saw another vortex of void open not far in front of them, blocking the route where they and Nanashion would meet. The fearsome one-eyed mask came out again, and there seemed to be 5 more blue flames on the fingertips of the opponent. On the other side, Nanashion, who was approaching the 3 people at a very fast speed, saw this scene and hurriedly reminded loudly, "Be careful, that is a fire barrier technique. Once you are trapped in it, it is difficult to escape." Uchiha Obito knew the moves he was going to use. Legend has it that it is a defensive barrier constructed by summoning hellfire. As for whether those flames were the legendary hellfire, Qishuang didn't know, but he knew that the defensive barrier had extremely strong defensive capabilities. Even with the power of the tailed beast, it couldn't be easily broken. It was extremely terrifying. Hearing this, Uchiha Obito couldn't help but look back at him and frowned. You know a lot. The technique he was about to use was indeed the flame defensive barrier that the other party mentioned. However, this technique was the first time he had shown it to others since he had mastered it. Now it hadn't even been fully unfolded, but he was seen through at a glance. He couldn't help but wonder if the other party's eyes also had mysterious pupil techniques hidden. But even though he was surprised, he still resolutely pressed his palm with blue flames to the ground. At the same time, hearing Qishuang's warning, Zabuza, who was full of warning signs in his heart, immediately slapped the beheading sword towards Terumi. Boom. Not expecting him to suddenly attack, Terumi Mei was immediately hit by the wide blade of the beheading sword. Then a huge force came from the blade, and she was slapped away in an instant. Uchiha fire formation. Obito's voice followed closely, and chakra was injected into the earth. 4 dark red walls of fire brushed against Terumi Mei's shoulders and rose from the ground. Zabuza and Haku, who had no time to escape, were trapped inside immediately. It was not until then that Terumi Mei understood why Zabuza had just slapped her with a sword. She struggled to get up, and after quickly forming a seal, she spat a mouthful of milky white mucus directly at the flame barrier. Who would have thought that the flame barrier was not only terrible in defense, but also had an extremely high flame temperature. Her soluble mucus stuck to it, and it had no effect at all. Instead, it was quickly burned into charcoal by the dark red flame, and turned into ashes, and fell to the ground. Looking at the blue-skirted beauty outside the flame barrier, Uchiha Obito frowned secretly and said, "Is there still one who escaped? But it doesn't matter, there are still 2 here." Then, he looked deeply at Zabuza and the others. Bei took out a few kunai, and tried the strength of the fire barrier, but the result was not pleasing. The kunai made of fine iron shot at it, but it did not cause any ripples. It melted into red molten iron before his eyes. "Mr. Zabuza, this fire barrier is as terrible as Senior Nana Frost said. We can't break it with just the 2 of us," Bei said to the man with the bandaged face with a little worry. Ding. The big knife in Zabuza's hand fell to the ground and hit a piece of gravel, making a crisp sound. "To escape from this barrier, you don't necessarily need to break it. There is another way." He looked straight at the one-eyed mask and said, "What is it?" Bei asked curiously. "Just kill the caster," Zabuza said in a cold tone. "Now, they are trapped in this fire barrier, and have no way to retreat. There is no other way, except to fight to the death." On the other side, Nana Frost finally joined up with Mei Terumi under the constant harassment of Kakuzu. However, Zabuza and Bei have been trapped in the barrier. Kakuzu was not willing to be lonely, and followed closely with the 4 masked clones. There was no time to greet Nana Frost, and seeing the combined ninjutsu of fire and wind coming at her, Terumi Mei immediately formed a seal and gathered chakra into her mouth. Water style, water formation pillar. She opened her mouth and spurted out a turbulent torrent, which immediately blocked the invading flames and wind. Although she fought against Kakuzu's 2 clones alone, she still did not fall into a disadvantage, but instead had a momentum of equal strength. Kakuzu couldn't help but secretly marvel at it. Earlier, he saw this woman use a water style to block Obito's powerful fire style, and he thought Obito was too weak and only had a good appearance. Now, when he fought with her in person, he realized that it was not Obito who was too weak, but this woman was really strong. In terms of ninjutsu ability, she was still slightly superior to him. Fortunately, he had all 5 basic attributes. Even if the fire attribute was suppressed, he still had wind, thunder, water and the earth attribute of his original body to use, so he didn't have to worry too much. At the same time, his 2 clones of lightning and water also launched a joint attack on the 2. Lightning style, pseudo darkness water style, water fang bullet. Fearing that Ming would be lost, Qishuang hurried forward to deal with the attack of Kakuzu's lightning and water clones, and opened his right hand to the incoming water cone and lightning. Ice style, ice wall. Waves of cold smoke seeped out of his body, entangled with each other in front of him, and in an instant, a several meter high ice wall condensed from the cold smoke. Boom, boom, boom. The lightning and water cones collided with it, making a dull sound. Apart from shaking off some ice chips, the ice wall was not shaken at all. Chapter 445, Fire Realm, Part 2. Bang. Kakuzu's dark brown arms followed closely behind, shooting at the ice wall like missiles, leaving 2 huge deep pits, but still failed to completely break it. Seeing that the attack was fruitless, Kakuzu quickly retreated, thinking, the situation is not good. Obito picked 2 soft persimmons, but left these 2 hard bones to me, which is not good at all. The man and woman in front of him are not simple characters. One-on-one, no matter who he faces, he is sure to suppress him, but facing 2 people at the same time, the person who is suppressed may be himself. Therefore, he decided to delay the 2 people for the time being, and didn't want to fight too hard. If the boat capsized in the ditch, it would be very bad. Wait until Obito solves the two people in the barrier and then come out to help him, or Obito first traps the people in the barrier and comes out to help him solve the two people outside. Otherwise, it is not a cost-effective deal for him to fight with this man and woman alone. On the other side, Maingetsu Hazuki, who had been staying out of the battle, wanted to attack several times, but he held back. He was waiting for a chance to take down Meditarumi with one blow. After all, the strength shown by that guy named Nanashiro was extraordinary, and Meditarumi herself was not a weak woman. If he acted rashly without full confidence, it would only make them more vigilant and increase the difficulty of his next attack. Therefore, he hoped that he could successfully control Meditarumi with one move, and did not want to drag the battle on. In the barrier, seeing that Kakuzu was not working hard, Obito immediately guessed the other party's thoughts. However, he didn't care at all. He just wanted to stage a drama of separation and death in front of Nanashiro. Then, he looked at the two people on the other side of the barrier and said sarcastically, "Killing me can indeed remove this barrier. However, it is still uncertain who will kill whom." Hearing this, Qishuang, who was confronting Kakuzu, hurriedly threatened, "Uchiha Obito, don't you want to take back Nohara in soul and bones?" As he said that, he took out a scroll from his pocket and waved it towards the barrier. Obito's pupils shrank slightly when he saw it, and he said solemnly, "I'm determined to get Rin's body. Of course I won't give up. But if you think you can threaten me and let them go, you are wrong. I still have a lot of chips in my hand that I can use to trade with you, but you only have Rin in your hand to trade with me. Now, let me open the door to hell for you and feel the pain I have suffered." After that, he activated the power of his right eye and opened a vortex of void that radiated outward in front of him. Countless shurikens, iron spears, and various weapons shot out from the center of the vortex like a rainstorm and immediately covered the narrow space of the barrier. Before Zabuza and his companions could make a move, they saw the rain of ninja tools coming all over the place. Zabuza had no choice but to block the big sword in front of him and quickly formed a set of hand seals. After being hit by a shuriken that missed, he stomped his foot heavily. Water style, water array wall. The blue water curtain surged from the ground, like a blue bowl turned upside down, completely protecting Zyuobe and him who were trying to resist the shooting of ninja tools. The black rain of ninja tools hit the water curtain, making a rustling sound, like a basket of gravel poured into a pond, and it was out of control. Outside the barrier, because Kakuzu was not working hard, Nana Frost and his companions could hardly catch their breath. Meditarumi pointed at the flame barrier and asked anxiously, "Do you have any way to break it?" Qishuang shook her head and said solemnly, "This barrier can even withstand the tailed beast ball. It's not that easy to break it. In addition, his ice escape is not a particularly offensive attribute, so it is a weakness for him in terms of attacking. Facing this Uchiha fire formation, there is no way to break it violently. Then I can only try my eclipse escape." Seeing that the blue-skirted beauty was about to cast a seal, Qishuang hurriedly stopped her and said, "You are not proficient in eclipse escape. It will be very risky to use it rashly. It's better not to use it. Then you should think of a way for me. Are you going to let Zabuza deal with that dangerous guy alone in there?" Being stopped by him, Meditarumi's anger suddenly rose. As for the young man, who was traveling with Zabuza, she completely ignored him. In a battle of this level, it is difficult for Zyuobe to help with his ability. It is good enough to ensure that he does not drag his feet. Glancing at the top of the barrier, Qishuang whispered to him, "I can fly in through the opening on the barrier, but I'm not sure if I can leave you alone outside." As he spoke, he glanced at Kakuzu and Manzuki Hazuki, who were watching closely not far away. With Ming's ability, it would be a bit difficult to deal with any one of them. If he had to deal with both of them at the same time, the result would be self-evident. Hearing him say that he could fly again, Meditarumi was stunned for a moment. However, she quickly came to her senses. Qishuang really could fly, and she was not joking with her. Because this was not the time to joke. Then, she hurriedly said to him, "That's easy. Why don't you take me with you to fly in?" At the same time, Obito in the barrier had stopped throwing ninja tools and used his ability to become a virtual being to pass directly through the water curtain. Hearing the words of the blue-skirted lady, Qishuang's eyes lit up and said, "Yes. I can also take you in with me. If he took Ming in as well, he would not only not have to worry about Ming's safety, but he could also use Uchiha barrier to keep Kakuzu and main Jetsu Kizuki out. Thinking of this, he quickly formed a set of hand seals and gathered chakra in his mouth. Water style, mist hidden technique. A vast white mist spurted out of his mouth and spread in all directions. In an instant, it covered the area of nearly 100 meters. Seeing that he was blocking his sight, fearing a sneak attack, Kakuzu immediately gathered the 4 mask clones and formed a back-to-back defensive formation. Main Jetsu Kizuki relied on his water transformation technique to stand still, without any fear, and calmly issued orders to the surrounding guards, "Open your eyes and look carefully, you must not leave, Meditarumi." For him, this farce of assassination was not just as simple as killing the assassin. The most important thing is to take this opportunity to keep the current leader of the Terumi family. As for the others, it doesn't matter. You are in the fog. Before Terumi Mei finished her words, Qishuang stopped spewing fog and said, "Quick, leave a clone here." As he said that, he changed his hand seals and mobilized chakra to cast the spell again. Wisps of cold smoke came out of him, and after entangled and condensed beside him, they turned into a young man who was exactly like him. Although he didn't know why, Terumi Mei still silently cast water escape, leaving a water clone in place. "Let's go." Then, Qishuang put his arm around Terumi Mei's waist and cast the levitation technique to instantly bounce into the sky. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446, Fight to the Death, Part 1. In order to cover up his movements, Qishuang deliberately created a thick fog. He even deliberately raised the height of the fog. In addition, the foggy environment of the hidden mist village made the sky and the earth the same color, and nothing could be seen. In the sky, feeling the strong wind on her face, Terumi Mei lowered her voice and said in surprise, "So, you can really fly?" Qishuang rolled her eyes at her, continued to climb up along the flame barrier, and said unhappily, "Do you think I'm teasing you? The Uchiha flame barrier penetrates the ground and goes straight up to the sky. Theoretically, it is still possible to sneak in from underground, but because the closer to the ground, the more terrifying the Earth's core heat energy. Ordinary people can't stand that kind of high temperature. Therefore, the possibility of sneaking in from underground is almost zero. Only from the top, another opening of the barrier on the cloud, can you enter it. But because the barrier of the barrier extends to hundreds of meters in the sky, people without the ability to fly cannot get close. Therefore, once the opponent is trapped by this barrier, there is almost no possibility of escape. Quick, speed up, speed up. Meditarumi pointed at the entrance of the cloud barrier and hurriedly urged, "Zabuza alone will deal with that Uchiha. It's Uchiha Obito." Nana Frost reminded with a dark face. "Yes, that's the name." Meditarumi nodded, and then said, "It's too dangerous for Zabuza to deal with him alone. We have to go in and help." Nana Frost climbed up quickly and said helplessly, "This is already the fastest speed. The barrier of the barrier is hundreds of meters high. It takes him nearly 2 minutes to fly from the ground to the top. When going down, because of gravity acceleration, the time will definitely be shorter, but the time spent on the 2 journeys combined will still take nearly 3 minutes. I just hope that in these 3 minutes, Zabuza and the other person will not encounter any accidents." Outside the barrier, after waiting for a long time without seeing any movement in the fog, Kakuzu couldn't help but become suspicious. He and the 4 clones immediately followed the direction of the man and woman in his memory and approached slowly and carefully. Main Jetsu stood still calmly. Although there was no movement in the fog, there was no news from the guards who surrounded the area, which meant that the people were still in the fog. As long as the people were still there, he was not worried at all. This was the territory of the main Jetsu family. They had an absolute advantage in numbers. As long as they were willing to spend a lot of money, even if the 3 ninjas of Konoha came, they would be overwhelmed by the endless stream of ninjas and there was no chance of survival. In the barrier, Zabuza was about to end the technique after noticing that the rain of ninja tools outside had stopped, but he saw a guy wearing a one-eyed mask, like a ghost, passing through his water curtain. Water style, 1000 killings water flying Zabuza, who was in charge of the alert, found the enemy and immediately formed a seal to cast the technique. He stepped forward with his right foot and transformed his chakra into the nature of water. Water droplets immediately splashed on the ground and turned into sharp 1000 blades, shooting at the one-eyed mask. Be careful, he can switch between the virtual and the real. But when he is virtual, he can't attack us effectively. Zabuza reminded loudly. Yes, I remember. Bay nodded and replied, while making a seal. As soon as Obito squeezed out of the water curtain, he was attacked by a bunch of senbon, but with the ability of the virtual in his right eye, he easily avoided it. At the same time, Zabuza, who had stopped releasing the technique, came to him with a big sword. Last time I only chopped off one of your hands, this time, I will chop off your head, Zabuza said coldly, while slashing with the sword. Although there is little chance of killing the opponent, it is better to lose the battle than the battle, and morale cannot be weak. Looking up to avoid the sword, Obito made a seal and retreated quickly, saying, do you think that, after seeing your swordsmanship again, I will still be stupid enough to fight you in close combat? Fire style, great fireball technique. He took a deep breath, held his right hand in front of his mouth, and spit out a red flame. The flame passed through the palm of his right hand and turned into a giant fireball with a diameter of 4 or 5 meters, rushing straight towards Zabuza. But Zabuza had no intention of dodging, but chased after him with his sword and was about to be hit by the giant fireball. Just when Obito was a little confused, a childish voice came from behind Zabuza. Ice release, magic mirror ice crystal. Then, bursts of cold smoke rose from the ground and quickly condensed into translucent ice mirrors in the air. There was even a mirror that just blocked Zabuza's body. Boom. The fireball ruthlessly hit the ice mirror, making a strange crackling sound, like broken glass. After all, Zabuza was too young, and his ice release ability was not as profound as Qishuang's. The ice mirror he made could not completely block Obito's giant fireball. Under the scorching heat and fierce impact, spider web-like cracks appeared on the ice mirror. Although the ice mirror used by Zabuza, which was inherited from the Snow Clan, has the characteristic of automatic recovery, it is still not enough to deal with the destruction of the fireball. In just 2 seconds, the cracks covered the entire ice mirror. However, for a master of physical arts like Zabuza, 2 seconds is enough to do a lot of things. While the ice mirror has not yet completely shattered, he rushed up in one step, using the ice mirror as a stepping stone and jumped up, instantly avoiding the attack of the fireball. Bang! As soon as his feet left the ice mirror, the fireball smashed the ice mirror, and the scattered ice fragments were immediately swallowed by the ruthless flames, and disappeared without a trace. At the same time, Zabuza raised his sword in midair, and chopped it straight down at the caster of the fireball. Obito was shocked when he saw it, and hurriedly stopped the spell and dodged sideways. Clang! The white blade brushed against the corner of his clothes, and fell heavily to the ground, immediately breaking the ground within a radius of several meters. Good opportunity. At that moment, a sharp wooden thorn slipped into Obito's hand from the sleeve of his right hand. He aimed at Zabuza's powerful blow, and when he landed with his old strength gone, and new strength not yet generated, he immediately shot the wooden thorn in his hand. That was the beginning of the wood release cutting technique. As long as the opponent is hit by this wooden thorn, no matter how big or deep the wound is, the sharp wooden thorn will cause fatal damage. Because, under the stimulation of the wood release chakra, the wooden thorn will continue to grow and expand into the victim's body. From the inside to the outside, it will cause irresistible disability to the victim. Even if the victim survives by chance, he will become a cripple. It is an extremely cruel technique. It is the same as the miserable state he suffered after being hit by Naname's rain of ice needles a few years ago. Both are similar techniques. Fortunately, his physique is very compatible with White Zetsu, and he can transplant and replace limbs and organs from White Zetsu's clone at will, so he did not become a real cripple. Now, he wants to pay back everything he has suffered. His target starts with this guy called Giran. Chapter 447, Death Battle, Part 2. Just when the wooden thorn was about to hit Zabuza, a green figure flashed by and knocked the wooden thorn to the ground. What happened? Obito was confused. Then he used the recording ability of the Sharingan to replay the process of the wooden thorn being knocked down in his mind. As the images flashed through his mind like film, he finally saw clearly that it was the boy who followed Zabuza who escaped from the ice mirror and knocked down his wooden thorn. Then he returned to the ice mirror in an instant. What a fast speed. Looking at the figure in the ice mirror, Obito exclaimed sincerely. The speed of the boy was extraordinary, far exceeding that of most ninjas. Even his Sharingan with dynamic vision ability, if he didn't concentrate, it would be difficult to capture the other party's whereabouts. The speed was really fast to the extreme. While he was sighing, Zabuza, who was hiding in the ice mirror, was not idle. He first used his chakra to create an image exactly like himself in each mirror. Then, with the help of a special ice escape instant body technique, he quickly shuttled through the mirrors, projecting sharp thousand bones at the enemy from different angles. In an instant, Obito, who was surrounded by the ice mirrors, was covered by a rain of thousand bones, leaving him no room to dodge. This ninjutsu is quite interesting. Looking at the incoming thousand bones, Obito's face under the mask had a playful smile. With the dynamic vision ability of the Sharingan, he could clearly see the shooting trajectory of each thousand bones, but because the thousand bones were shot from different directions and the time interval was very short, even if he could block some of them, he still had no chance to avoid the other part. Fortunately, his right eye had the ability to virtualize and ignore all attacks, otherwise he would have to consider how to reduce his own damage in the face of such an attack. Ding ding ding. The thousand bones shot from all directions, all pierced Obito's body, and shot to the ground empty, without any effect. However, just as the rain of thousand bones stopped, Zabuza, who had a breath, rushed over again with his sword. He clearly understood that, compared to close-range physical attacks, long-range ninjutsu attacks were the easiest type for the opponent to dodge. Fortunately, close-range physical attacks were what he was best at. If he could catch the opponent's flaw again, when he revealed his physical body, he could severely injure him like last time, or even kill him on the spot. However, he also knew that, after being severely injured by him once, the guy in front of him had learned his lesson, and was no longer willing to get entangled with him in close combat. Even with Zabuza's protection, his chances of winning were not very high. Obito stood quietly in place, and formed a group of hand seals, without any intention of dodging. Seeing that Zabuza's sword was less than a meter away from him, he opened his right hand directly to it. Would release Hell's Chaos just when Zabuza thought that the opponent was going to take his sword with his bare hands. The hand wearing a black glove suddenly turned into a thick and tangled vine, immediately blocking the caster behind him. Then, the tangled vines rushed towards him fiercely like a giant dragon awakened. Seeing that he could not reach the target and there was a risk of being entangled by the vines, Zabuza immediately gave up the plan of a surprise attack, turned the broadsword around, and aimed the spine of the blade at the vines, and chopped them hard. He knew very well that the vines were as thick as 3 or 4 adults hugging together, and it was definitely not something he could cut with one sword, so the sword was not to cut the vines, but to gain leverage. Boom. The blunt spine of the beheading broadsword hit the vines. Not only did it not cut into them, but a huge recoil force bounced back from the blade. Zabuza used this recoil force to stop his momentum, and then stepped back quickly. At the same time, Shiro, who was hidden in the ice mirror, found an opportunity, and threw a dense stream of thousands of swords from all angles without hesitation. Because Zabuza's sword chopped on the real vines. That is to say, the one-eyed mask did not use the ability of hollowing at this time, but revealed its entity. Hearing the familiar sound of breaking through the air, Obito looked at the figure in the ice mirror and mocked, "What can a few senbon do to me?" After saying that, he gently turned his head to avoid the stabbing of the senbon, allowing those senbon to pierce his body and increase the chakra output to the vines. The ninjutsu of this ice escape boy is very interesting, but that's all. It can't cause him any serious damage. Compared with the one outside the barrier, it is really too far. He can't use the ability of hollowing for a few minor injuries and miss such an opportunity to kill Momochi's abuser. Because, when he uses the ability of hollowing, these vines connected to him will also be affected by the effect of hollowing, and cannot form an effective attack effect. In an instant, as he increased the output of chakra, the growth rate of the vines increased sharply, and once again entangled Zabuza, who was retreating in a hurry. After Zabuza found out that his opponent was determined to trade his life for his injury, he retreated quickly while forming hand seals. After the chakra of water style, water array wall was transformed by the nature of water. It was injected into his feet. Then he saw a wide water curtain rising into the sky in front of him, forming a rapids barrier on the path of the vine dragon. However, the water curtain barrier that Zabuza had high hopes for did not stop the huge vine dragon at all. It was seen that it was slightly delayed when passing through the barrier, and then it broke through the barrier of the water curtain in an unstoppable manner, and rushed forward again. Zabuza gritted his teeth, and had to retreat again with his sword, to avoid the ferocious vine dragon. Shiro, who was hiding in the ice mirror, saw that his offensive was ignored, and Zabuza was forced to retreat again and again, so he rushed out of the ice mirror, and attacked the source of the vines, the one-eyed mask. He wanted to force such a Hirobito to give up his attack and return to defense, giving Zabuza a chance to catch his breath. However, none of his actions escaped Obito's Sharingan. Just when Base Kune was about to pierce Obito's head, several sharp wooden thorns suddenly popped out from the vines on the opponent's right arm and shot straight at him. Helplessly, Bei had to give up the plan of attacking, and waved the Kune in his hand, to block the sudden wooden thorns. Just when Obito was distracted and prepared to shoot a few more wooden thorns, Bei hurriedly retreated, and once again disappeared into the ice mirror, making his plan fall through. "You escaped quite quickly," Obito snorted coldly, and then said, "but this place is all covered by my barrier. I wonder where you can escape to." At this time, Zabuza, who was forced to retreat hastily by the vine dragon, seemed to hit something. In just a moment, an indescribable burning and stinging sensation appeared on his back. Because he was pressed too hard by the vine dragon, he was so focused on avoiding the opponent's attack that he ignored everything around him. It was only then that he remembered that he was surrounded by a terrifying flame barrier. "Ah!" He screamed and immediately threw himself on the sand next to him, rubbing his back desperately, hoping to put out the flames on his back as soon as possible. Chapter 448, Fight to the Death, Part 2. Because of this momentary mistake, Zabuza was injured by the flame barrier and lost the chance to avoid the vine dragon. When he felt a terrifying breath coming towards him, the yellow-brown dragon had already arrived in front of him. "Mr. Zabuza, be careful," only a young man exclaimed, and a familiar thin figure jumped out of the ice mirror next to him and blocked the vine dragon directly. It was Bei, who used Ice Escape to move to the mirror closest to Zabuza, ready to resist the attack of the vine. Ice Escape, Magic Mirror Ice Crystal. He quickly flipped his fingers, trying his best to create 10 overlapping ice mirrors in front of him, and prepared to use them to resist the vine dragon. However, Bei's ice mirror couldn't resist even 2's great fireball, and it was impossible to face the vine that was dozens of times stronger than the physical impact. In just a moment, in his astonished eyes, the 10 ice mirrors were easily shattered by the vine dragon like tofu. Despite this, he did not retreat a single step, because Zabuza was still behind him. He gritted his teeth, held the kunai, and resisted the rushing vine dragon. However, Haku was still young, only 11 or 12 years old. His body had not grown up at all, and his muscles were not very strong. Under the impact of the vine dragon, he was pushed against the red flame wall behind him in an instant. "Haku," Zabuza stood up with difficulty, holding his sword, and looked at the boy who was trapped on the wall and burned by the flames, and let out a heart-wrenching cry. If Haku had not kicked him away at the moment he was knocked away by the vine dragon, he would have ended up being burned by the flames at this moment. "I'm sorry, Mr. Zabuza. I can't accompany you anymore." Haku smiled with a trace of regret, and was quietly submerged by the dark red flames. Because the vines were ignited, Obito interrupted the release of the technique, and cut off the connection between the vines and his body. Then, he looked at the man with the knife on the other side and said coldly, "He is the first, you are the second." At the same time, Qishuang and the other man who were falling rapidly in the sky also saw the tragic scene of Zhao Bei being buried in the sea of fire. However, they were too far away to rescue him, even if they saw it. The angry Terumi immediately pinched the seal and cast a spell, spitting out one milky white mud bullet after another directly at the one-eyed mask below. Noticing the abnormality above his head, Obito discovered the two people who were falling rapidly. This guy can actually fly? Looking at the blue-dressed beauty held in Qishuang's arms, Obito was shocked. After calmly avoiding the milky white mud bullets falling from the sky, he thought silently, "This is good. I will kill Momochi's abuser right under your nose. Let you also feel the taste of being powerless." Then, he grabbed a piece of wooden thorn that slipped down from his right sleeve and rushed directly towards Zabuza on the other side. According to his rough estimate, it would take about 40 seconds for Qishuang and the other man to reach the ground. Just in case, he had better finish the fight in 30 seconds. Meanwhile, although Zabuza was immersed in the sorrow of Haku's death, he did not relax his guard. He was eager to avenge Haku, but because he was burned by the flame barrier, every time he moved his arm, the injury on his back would be affected, and the pain was unbearable, so he chose to use stillness to control movement and wait for attack. And Uchiha Obito's momentum of preparing to launch a close-range attack just met his wishes. Then, he tightened his grip on the hilt, forcibly suppressed the pain and sorrow of Haku's death, made his mind and spirit one, entered a state of emptiness, and briefly recovered to his best mental state. Prepare to kill that hateful guy in one go. Obito was a little surprised to notice the changes in him, but he still launched the attack firmly. Because he didn't have much time. He must kill Momochi's abuser with one blow in the shortest time. Zabuza, who had stretched his mental state to the limit, took a step forward the moment he found Uchiha Obito stepping into his attack range. Taking advantage of the length of his sword, he took the lead in launching an attack with a horizontal slash. Swish. The blade broke through the air and slashed straight through Uchiha Obito's waist, but there was no sense of force on the blade, and no blood was left. Uchiha Obito still rushed forward towards Zabuza, who was at the end of the hilt. The sword missed, but Zabuza, who had been mentally prepared, did not feel any loss. Instead, at the moment when the opponent passed through his body with the ability of virtualization, he switched the hilt to his left hand along with the momentum of the sword. He held the hilt with his backhand, and at the moment when the opponent completely passed through his body, he swung the sword in an arc again and slashed directly behind him. Because he knew that Uchiha ninjas with the dynamic vision of the Sharingan like to strike at the right time, and the moment when the opponent passed through his body was a good opportunity to strike. However, although he forced himself to forget everything and enter a state of unity of body and mind, the burn on his back was still objective, which seriously affected his arm strength. Especially this kind of continuous offensive, which was originally strong at the beginning, weak at the second, and exhausted at the third. Under the influence of the injury, Zabuza's sword speed was obviously much slower than the first sword. With the dynamic vision ability of the Sharingan, Obito saw through Zabuza's movements, but he still didn't know how to avoid the fatal waist cut at the moment when the wooden thorn was stabbed into the opponent's body. Therefore, he did not cancel the ability of hollowing, but just stared at the big knife that cut through his body, ready to counterattack at any time. With the ability of dynamic vision, he watched the blade leave his body little by little and aimed the wooden thorn in his hand at Zabuza's vest. At the moment when the blade completely left his body, he cancelled the ability of hollowing in his right eye. At this moment, his body and the wooden thorn in his hand that was about to pierce into the opponent's body were all materialized. However, at this time, Zabuza's left hand once again switched the handle of the sword to the right hand behind his back. At the same time, he burst out with all his strength and twisted his waist, suddenly reversed the momentum of the sword, and slashed the enemy behind him for the third time. Uchiha Obito couldn't help but shrink his pupils slightly, because the speed of the sword was slightly faster than the first one. As the saying goes, a dragon will regret, and fullness cannot last long. The opponent's sword speed should be getting slower and slower, but this third sword is completely beyond common sense, which surprised him. Obito didn't know that long before the first sword was slashed. Zabuza knew that with his current physical condition, he could only slash 3 times continuously. After 3 swords, he was exhausted, and because of the injuries on his body, he could no longer maintain this mental state of unity of body and mind. At that time, he would fall into weakness for a short time. but fighting with the Sharingan, which is best at capturing fighters, this sudden state of weakness is no different from seeking death. In addition to the opponent's ability to become a hollow, he didn't expect the first 2 strikes to kill the opponent. Therefore, when he struck the first strike, he only used 70% of his strength and deliberately kept 30% of his strength in order to suddenly burst out with the last strike and catch the opponent off guard. He hoped that he could use this third strike to completely kill Uchiha Obito and avenge Zyobei. Puff. Accompanied by the muffled sound of muscles being torn, the bright red blood dripped onto the ground. Chapter 449. Death Battle. End. How could it be? Looking at the wooden thorn stuck in his chest, Zabuza widened his eyes in astonishment. His blade stopped at Uchiha Obito's waist, only slightly cutting into the epidermis. Just a little bit. He could avenge Zyobei and cut this hateful guy in 2 with one sword. However, just this little bit seemed to make a world of difference, clearly separating life and death. Because the opponent's left hand was firmly against his hilt, so the blade could not move forward any further. You are surprised why I can block your sword this time, right? Uchiha Obito looked at him jokingly and said meaningfully, because this sword is heavy and big enough. Otherwise, why do you think I gave you the broken sword beheading sword when there are so many weapons in the Kirigakure arsenal? Hearing this, Zabuza suddenly realized. It turned out that when the other party gave him this sword, he had hidden evil intentions and buried a backhand to deal with him. Because the beheading sword is more than 10 times heavier than his original sword, and the size difference is even greater. Even if he has superb sword skills, after suddenly changing to such a heavier and larger sword, the speed of the sword will inevitably decrease a lot. Facing those opponents who are weaker than himself, it is not a big deal, and the slight changes will not have much impact. But when facing opponents with similar strength, some small problems will become big problems. Especially the one in front of him, who has the dynamic vision ability of the Sharingan. Maybe Zabuza feels that he has not changed much, but in the vision of the Sharingan, this slowed down sword speed flaw will be extremely magnified. Originally, before setting off, he had considered finding a weapon similar to his original sword to temporarily make up the number, but in order to gain the trust of the enemy and reduce their vigilance against him, he resolutely chose the beheading sword. Who knew that this sword would become the last straw that broke the camel's back? Unfortunately, it was too late to regret. Well, you should go on your way with peace of mind, Zabuza Momochi. Just as Obito was about to take further action, an angry shout came from the sky. Uchiha Obito. He subconsciously looked up and saw a 3-meter long ice spear piercing straight at his head. The man and woman followed closely behind and had already arrived. Unfortunately, you are too late. The entrance to hell has been opened. Under the mask, Obito's face had a hint of mockery. He left the wooden thorn in Zabuza's chest, retreated hastily, and made a hand seal. Would release. Cutting technique at this moment, he controlled the chakra in the wooden thorn to produce new changes. The wooden thorn left on Zabuza's chest was like a seed. Under the catalytic effect of the wood release chakra, 1 gave birth to 2, 2 gave birth to 4, and grew countless branches. In an instant, Zabuza's body was pierced by dozens of wooden thorns, and was pierced into a hornet's nest. Blood was all over the ground. He only managed to hold onto his sword with one breath, so he didn't fall to the ground. Boom. As soon as Obito left, a huge ice spear fell to the ground. Nanashi and Terumi followed closely, but unfortunately they were still a step too late. Zabuza was covered in blood, and his chest and back were pierced by wooden thorns. There was no intact skin on his chest, as if someone had hollowed out his chest and stuffed it with a bundle of wooden thorns. Zabuza, seeing his former companion in such a miserable state, Teruma's eyes turned red. Zabuza's mouth was bleeding, and he smiled miserably. I'm sorry, because of my selfishness. I brought you to such a dangerous place. But, I really want to beat him once. As he said that, he slowly turned his head and looked at the young man in white next to him. Hearing this, Nanashi rubbed his head painfully. It was not until this time that he finally understood that Zabuza was still thinking about competing with him to kill Obito. Only then did he pretend to surrender, took Terumi hostage, and lurked beside Obito, ready to kill Obito. Unfortunately, although Zabuza knew that Obito would reveal his physical flaws when absorbing other things, he was still no match for Obito's cunning, causing the sneak attack to fail and exposing his intentions first. "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." Zabuza apologized again and again, his voice becoming weaker and weaker. Nana Frost suppressed her grief, guarded against Obito, and grabbed Zabuza's bloody palm to comfort him. "Don't worry, it's okay. As long as I'm here, I will definitely take Mei away safely." However, his defense was a bit redundant, because Uchiha Obito had no intention of taking this opportunity to launch an offensive. For Obito, his happiness is built on the pain of others. This is revenge. He was even happy to spend more time to slowly appreciate this tragedy he created with his own hands. Outside the barrier, Kakuzu, who went deep into the thick fog, found the traces of the man and woman again. Only after he easily defeated the two did he realize that they were two clones, and the other party's real body was still missing. Hazuki Maingetsu continued to wait leisurely. As long as there was no bad news, it was good news for him. He had time to waste with them here. Inside the barrier, Zabuza's eyes gradually lost their luster, and he could only mutter, "It's a pity. I can't see the day when the war is settled and the Kirigakure is rebuilt. I really want to. I really want to. I really want to see what Mei dreamed of." Zabuza's words stopped abruptly. With a somewhat regretful smile, he drooped his head weakly, like a kite with a broken string, disappearing into the endless sky. Zabuza, Meditaruna's tears could not be stopped after all, and rolled down from the corners of her eyes. Uchiha Obito. Nanashiro's eyes were red, looking at the one-eyed mask in the other corner of the barrier, roaring and shouting the other party's name. Like an angry lion, he could tear everything in front of him to pieces at any time. Uchiha Obito shrugged nonchalantly and mocked, "Are you heartbroken? Are you sad? Do you hate me? This is what you Kirigakure forced on me. I just gave it back to you. What qualifications do you have to hate me?" As he spoke, his tone gradually became colder, revealing his dissatisfaction nakedly. Besides, a cruel guy like Momochi's abuser who has been ruthless since childhood and killed all the candidates in one fell swoop is not worth your anger at all, right? I helped you Kirigakure solve such a murderous demon. You should thank me. His tone changed again, and Obito continued to mock. Because he had checked the files of the demon's abuser, he knew that Zabuza had killed many people in the ninja graduation exam. Nanami gathered chakra in his hands, and after transforming the nature of ice, he materialized it into a 6-foot-long sharp ice spear. With a roar, he immediately rushed towards Uchiha Obito with the ice spear. You don't understand Zabuza at all. Now, only killing can calm his inner anger and sadness. In fact, as early as the previous chapter Broken Sword, I had planted the cause of Zabuza's death. The sword is still there, the man is still there, the sword is broken, and the man dies. Although the broken sword has a small impact, but in the battle between masters, life and death are just a little difference. Chapter 450 Demon. Qishuang thrust a spear at Obito, but the opponent had no intention of dodging, and even raised his chest in contempt. Swish. The tip of the spear passed through his body and stabbed into the ground, but there was no feeling of force. How can a heartless bastard like you understand what kind of mood Zabuza was in that made him so cruel to kill all his classmates? Qishuang roared and pulled out the ice spear, quickly turning around and sweeping it. Seeing his glittering light white glow, Uchiha Obito had no desire to fight back and still stood there quietly, savoring this hard-earned happiness. So, you know the reason for this? Obito asked jokingly. The ice spear swept across his waist, but there was still a feeling of emptiness and powerlessness, just like a full-strength punch hitting cotton. With nowhere to vent his anger, Qishuang became more and more angry. He waved the ice spear, poking and smashing at Uchiha Obito like crazy. Of course I know. Zabuza was just trying to force the higher-ups to revise the ninja graduation exam system, so he made up his mind to kill all his classmates one by one, and was willing to bear the name of demon. After a long time together, Nana Frost knew very well that Zabuza was a man who was tough on the outside but soft on the inside. Otherwise, he would not have brought the young Zabuza with him, and even personally cleared his identity for him. But it was such a man who created a tragedy in the history of the graduation of the Kirigakure ninja in his youth, where no one survived. This is not Zabuza's style, but Zabuza did it. At first, Nana Frost thought that Zabuza was really cold-blooded and liked to kill people, so he killed all his classmates. But after a long time, he realized that, although Zabuza was cold-tempered, he was not ruthless. In the year of the ninja graduation exam, Zabuza killed all his classmates, but in fact he had another purpose. As for the purpose, it was also very simple, because the result of that killing was to force the Kirigakure high-ups to change the ninja graduation rules that had lasted for decades. After that, all the mist ninjas would not kill each other when they graduated. In other words, Zabuza just wanted to exchange his temporary killing for redemption in the future. No one would have thought that Zabuza, who was only 9 years old at the time, would have such an idea, just as no one thought that Ninashiro would withdraw from the exam by self-mutilation. Everyone regarded Zabuza as a murderer, but only Ninashiro understood that Zabuza's killing had another meaning. Only in this way can we explain why Zabuza took such unreasonable actions. Hearing Ninashiro's words, Obito, who was watching the show leisurely, could not help but be speechless. So that's how it is. So that's how it is. No wonder he pretended to surrender to assassinate me. After thinking about it, Obito suddenly realized, if the man called Demon Man really has such a trait, it is not difficult to explain why the other party rebelled again after holding Meditarumi hostage. Because the other party not only rebelled for revenge for Ao, but also to solve him, the culprit who subverted the mist. From the beginning, she had decided to kill him, and his seduction had nothing to do with it. Or, the man called Demon Man had been fighting for Kirigakure from the beginning to the end, and had never betrayed him. At the same time, after hearing his words, Nana Qishuang suddenly understood. Zabuza held Mei hostage and assassinated Obito, and his fundamental purpose was not to compete with him, but for Kirigakure. Competing with him was just an excuse to cover up. That man would never be so superficial. At the same time, Meditarumi, who was looking for Zyobei's body on the other side, finally understood everything after hearing the conversation between the two. It's a pity that Zabuza always keeps everything in his heart. If he had informed her in advance about the surrender and assassination of Uchiha Obito, and had her cooperation, the ending might be different now. What a pity, what a pity. After extinguishing the dark red flames on the vines, and unraveling the twisted vines, a few white bones came into view. Zyobei's body had been completely burned, and only this was left. Then, she carefully brought it to Zabuza's body, and took out a blank scroll to cover it. After several hand seals changed, she shouted softly, "Seal." White smoke rose, and Zabuza's body and Zyobei's remains were sealed in the scroll. On the other side, seeing Nana Frost angry and anxious, but helpless, Obito was extremely happy. But no matter how good a movie is, it has an ending, and he is tired of watching it. That woman is my next target, he said to the young man in white who was close at hand. Then, with the help of his hollow ability, he escaped into the ground in front of Nana Frost in an instant. Although Nana Frost was very angry because of Zabuza's death, he had not completely lost his mind. The moment he saw Obito disappear, he immediately reminded loudly, "Ming, be careful, that guy is coming." After hearing this, Meditarumi's face was stern, and she immediately gathered her chakra into her mouth. Dissolving escape, dissolving monsters technique. After transforming the chakra into a dissolving escape technique, she immediately spat out a large amount of milky white mucus and spread it on the ground like a carpet. In just a moment, the ground inside the flame barrier was covered with a layer of milky white mucus. She attached her chakra to the soles of her feet and stood calmly on the mucus carpet. Because the mucus was made by her own chakra, she could attach the chakra to the soles of her feet and use the same chakra to isolate the mucus from accidental injuries. If others rashly attached their chakra to the soles of their feet and stepped on it, they would only be completely stuck to the mucus and then corroded and turned into pus. At this moment, the ground inside the entire barrier was covered with mucus by her. Once Uchiha Obito showed up and revealed his entity, he would immediately be stuck to it and be corroded by the dissolving escape mucus. She could move freely on it and easily get rid of anyone's entanglement. In other words, the entire area inside the barrier became her private domain, and she could move freely. Originally, in this closed barrier, the most suitable technique for her to use was boiling acid mist. In order to prevent accidental injury to Nanami, she could only settle for the next best thing and use this dissolving mucus. However, she spread the mucus all over the ground of the barrier, and there was still a suspicion that Nanami was affected. But she knew clearly that Nanami had a strong chakra coat on her body, so she didn't have to worry about the mucus accidentally hurting her. The boiling acid mist was a little different. Once it spread throughout the barrier, it would be inhaled into the body with human breathing, which was a type that Nanami's chakra coat could not defend against. Therefore, she couldn't use boiling acid mist. Soon, near behind her, a one-eyed mask drilled out from the ground. Mucus field. It's really a bit tricky. Looking at the mucus all over the ground, Obito didn't dare to cancel his ability to become a hollow, but frowned secretly. Did Zabuza kill so many people when he graduated just because he was bored? Think about why Itachi agreed to exterminate the entire clan. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.